Chapter 12:12. Wei Ci did not practice martial arts, and the musician in front of him was not someone ordinary martial artists could see through. Jiang Pengji did not blame him for inviting a wolf into the house. She discreetly separated Wei Ci from the blind musician and sat directly on Wei Ci's original cushion. Zixiao, I suddenly remembered that I left something at home. Can you help me make a trip? Jiang Pengji was indeed a straightforward girl. The excuse she found was also very stiff. Before Wei Ci could speak, the blind musician suddenly broke into a faint smile. It was as if the snow that had not melted for thousands of years had suddenly melted. It was breathtaking. Jiang Pengji was not fooled. Not only did she not relax, but her brows furrowed even more. Her left hand was placed on the hilt of the god-slaying sword at her waist. All the muscles in her body were tense. Are you nervous? The blind musician in white asked. His voice was different from Wei Ci's. Instead, it was indescribably cold. Just these 4 words made Jiang Pengji suddenly realize that she was so nervous that she was sweating. What was this person's background? As soon as the musician finished speaking, he raised his hand with distinct joints and caressed the surface of the zither. He did not touch a single string, but the pleasant sound of the zither rippled in the air. Jiang Pengji drew her sword and slashed at the man's vital parts. He did not dodge. His smile deepened. Ding! The god-slaying sword that had never failed seemed to see something transparent. The two collided and made a crisp sound. She was fine, but Wei Ci was affected by the sound of the zither. His eyelids felt heavy as if they were filled with lead water. He leaned against the pillar of the pavilion and slid to the ground. Seeing this, Jiang Pengji's eyes were full of danger. There was a hint of bloodthirst in them. Do you want to die? Jiang Pengji said these 3 words and the god-slaying sword fell again. It also met with an invisible layer of light, but that layer of light did not last long. It could not bear the weight and made a cracking sound. The blade attacked the blind musician's neck. He did not move. His body was as agile and soft as water. He easily dodged the knife. I haven't seen you for so many years, but your temperament has not changed at all, the musician said. How can I be at ease when you advance so aggressively? When Jiang Pengji heard this, she frowned and stopped. Who are you? The strength displayed by the zither player did not seem to belong to the people of this world. Jiang Pengji could not figure out the other party's identity and intentions, let alone whether he was a friend or a foe. Wei Ci was just beside her, so she could not use her full strength. Instead, her hands and feet were tied. The zither master said, You don't remember? Jiang Pengji laughed angrily. Should I remember who you are? The zither master held the zither to his chest with one hand and stroked the air in front of his eyes with the other. The white cloth that was 3 fingers wide dissipated into specks of light with a white light. When the white cloth disappeared, Jiang Pengji realized that the man was not blind at all. Not only was he not blind, but his eyes were deeper and brighter than ordinary people's. You are. Looking at the other person's face, an illusory portrait floated before her eyes. She actually felt that it was somewhat familiar? The zither master said. You still haven't remembered? With that, the zither player's zither turned into a long sword, which he carried on his back. Jiang Pengji felt as if she had been struck by lightning. The material of this sword was obviously of the same origin as the Zhanshan blade. You're the one who gave me the god-slaying saber? The zither master could not help but laugh. Is that all you remember? Jiang Pengji stood by the zither table, her right hand holding the hilt of the Zhanshan blade in a death grip. Her eyes stared unblinkingly at the zither master in white. No, it should be the swordsman in white. Pengji, you've done well. The corners of his lips curled up slightly as he said with a smile. Sky's brain is extremely cunning and powerful. Although I killed its main body back then, a part of it escaped successfully. For a whole 2,000 years, it has harmed hundreds of low-level planes. This disaster has become a reality. 2 lifetimes? Done well? Jiang Pengji felt as if she had been struck by lightning. She was completely stunned. What 2 lifetimes? Jiang Pengji was stunned on the spot. There was a treasure chest hidden in the depths of her memory. The man's voice was the only key to opening the treasure chest. For a moment, countless memories came pouring in. Jiang Pengji cried out in pain. She held the sword and knelt on one knee. Her heavy breathing was accompanied by cold sweat. In a daze, Jiang Pengji seemed to see the figure of another person appear out of thin air beside her. It was a woman dressed in white. Is it really okay to let her recover her memory now? The woman asked the swordsman in white. The swordsman in white raised his hand to receive the woman's soft hand. He placed his palm on hers. You and I can't stay in this plane for too long. We have to lock up that disaster to prevent a long night from bringing trouble. Let Pengji recover her memory as soon as possible and remember the cause and effect. That way, you and I can rest easy. After she settles the cause and effect here, there are still a lot of things waiting for her in the Federation. The woman was strangely silent for a while. She drew her sword and slashed you just now. When she recovers her memory, do you think she will show mercy? The man said, the body she's using now is just a mortal body. She can't hurt me. Realizing that the two of them had left, Jiang Pengji allowed the majestic memories to engulf her. She fell to the ground and fainted. Although she said she fainted, she didn't actually faint for long. Jiang Pengji opened her eyes expressionlessly and sat on the ground. She casually threw the God of War sword beside her hand. She turned her head to look at Wei Si. She was stunned for a while before she was sure that she didn't see wrongly. She raised her arms and held him in her arms as if she was holding a treasure that she had lost and found. Looking around, the surface of the pond reflected the sparkling light. It was so bright that it made her eyes soar. She remembered many things. In her dream, she became another Jiang Pengji and killed her way to the throne from a bandit. It seemed like a successful life, but it had endless regrets. She had staked everything on one throw and she actually won the gamble. Even though she knew that both lives were a trap set up by that man and woman, she couldn't blame them. The legacy of the heavenly brain was still there. As the commander of the 7th Army, she shouldered the responsibility of protecting the Federation. She couldn't shirk it. Not to mention entering the trap to capture the heavenly brain, she wouldn't even hesitate to hand over her life. Jiang Pengji raised her hand and rubbed the area between her eyebrows. She regained her strength for a while before she carried Wei Si out of the waterside pavilion. The Yin energy there was heavy and humid. Wei Si would feel very uncomfortable staying there. Little did she know that Wei Si's illness of having a cold body had long since recovered. His current condition was much better than in his previous life. Wei Si woke up in a stuffy heat. As soon as he opened his eyes, he saw someone using both hands and feet to encircle him in her arms. The room was burning with charcoal, and 4 or 5 thick blankets were piled on the bed. This familiar situation. Lanting, loosen your grip. If she didn't let go, he would suffocate to death. Oh! It was rare for Jiang Pengji to loosen her hands and feet meekly. Why are you here? Wei Si looked at her in confusion. Jiang Pengji raised her eyebrows. You don't remember? Wei Si thought for a while and shook his head, perplexed. He really couldn't remember. Jiang Pengji opened her mouth and said, You had a fever a few days ago, and you were sick for a few days. Wei Si subconsciously felt that something was wrong, but he couldn't recall his recent memories. It was as if they were covered with a layer of white gauze, and he couldn't see them clearly. Probably. He was really muddled from his illness. Your Majesty, aren't you going back to the palace to sleep? I'm sick now, and my illness will infect your Majesty. Jiang Pengji's limbs were spread out like a pancake, and she occupied more than half of the bed. I'm not leaving. Without you by my side, I can't sleep. Even in my dreams, I dream that you've been seduced by some annoying zither player. Wei Si couldn't help but laugh. Fine, I won't leave. But I'm still sick. Bring me another blanket. Jiang Pengji pouted and turned over. She looked at Wei Si without blinking. In her previous life, Wei Si was distant, gentle, cautious, and restrained. He was always rational, but his emotions were always fiercely suppressed. Now it was different. There was no melancholy between his brows. Instead, there was a sense of calmness and warmth that made people feel comfortable. This was the real Wei Si. Everything was as perfect as she had imagined it to be. Jiang Pengji took the opportunity to roll a little and reached out to Wei Si. No, Peng Peng wants a hug from Zixiao. Your Majesty is not a 3-year-old child. Don't fool around. It's not good if you get sick. Wei Si patiently persuaded her with a smile. Jiang Pengji wriggled like a worm and rubbed herself against Wei Si's side. While he was unprepared, she hugged him and rolled one round. Her toes clamped a blanket and covered her body. Chapter 12-13. Jiang Pengji heard Yang Xi's voice clearly through the military tent. He laughed so hard that he hiccuped. It's a pity that Officer Jiang isn't here. If you, Jiang Nongqin said coldly. Disgusting. Yang Xi nodded in agreement. That scene is indeed disgusting. If Officer Jiang sees it, it will inevitably stain your eyes. After a while, Jiang Pengji heard Jiang Nongqin ask Yang Xi. Although Zhao Xiao offended you, you don't have to use such means to deal with him. Even if Jiang Nongqin had completely let it go and did not care about the experience of her youth, she could not bear to see someone use such despicable means to destroy a person. Although Zhao Xiao's life had been predetermined by Yang Tao and his name was already hanging in front of the King of Hell, Yang Xi's move was too vicious. Yang Xi frowned and looked as if he had been wronged. He said bitterly, "In Officer Jiang's eyes, I am such a sinister villain?" Jiang Nongqin sneered and asked, "Do you think you are very kind?" The kind and lovely Yang Jingrong was probably the biggest joke of the year. Yang Xi coughed awkwardly and said, "I disdain to use such means to deal with Zhao Xiao. If he had done it, then he had done it. If he had not done it, then he had not done it." Yang Xi denied that Zhao Xiao had anything to do with him, so Jiang Nongqin naturally believed him. "Then why would he?" Yang Xi said, "When I found Zhao Xiao, he had already been taken by those gangsters. I was only helping him to hide his tracks and preserve his dignity as a gentry's pride. Think about it, if everyone barged in and found him lying on the ground, how ugly would the scene be? So what if he, Yang Xi, was petty and vengeful? How did Zhao Xiao scold him in front of him at the banquet at Longshui Hongmen in Shanghai County that he was the son of a prostitute and a born bastard? Those words caused great harm to his soul, and he had not recovered until now. Yang Xi did not find someone with great fanfare to disrupt Zhao Xiao and a few gangsters. Instead, he helped him hide his tracks and let him enjoy a few more days. This was a model of repaying evil with good. In terms of eloquence, Jiang Nongqin could not beat Yang Xi. Even if others knew about it, Yang Xi's fault was at most concealed. Who could do anything to him? Jiang Nongqin said, "If the Lord asks, I won't help you hide it." Yang Xi did not report it, but he could not hide it for a few days. After all, Zhao Xiao alone could not withstand the repeated torment of a few gangsters. If he had been a day or two later, he would have lost his life. Yang Xi found an excuse to borrow someone from Jiang Nongqin's side and directly revealed Zhao Xiao's whereabouts. Jiang Nongqin was keenly aware that something was not right. That was why she came to test Yang Xi, which led to the conversation earlier. Yang Xi confessed to his crimes, and spilled everything in one gulp. Yang Xi waved his hand and said, "If the Lord asks, I will bear the responsibility alone." Who in the entire military camp did not know that Jiang Nongqin and their lord were of one mind? However, Jiang Nongqin was still loyal to him. She did not take the initiative to report him to the lord. This could be considered as progress in their friendship. However, Jiang Nongqin said, "That's great. You're in charge of the lord." Yang Xi answered vaguely. He subconsciously realized that there was something wrong with Jiang Nongqin's words. "Master!" Yang Xi saw that Jiang Nongqin was about to stand up and leave, so he stood up to send her off. He lifted the curtain of the tent and saw his lord standing outside. Suddenly, Yang Xi understood what Jiang Nongqin meant by her words just now. Their friendship was over. This hypocritical plastic flower friendship. Jiang Pengji signaled Jiang Nongqin with her eyes to leave. The latter bowed and left without looking back, leaving Yang Xi shivering. "Master." His voice was not confident and sounded very weak. Jiang Pengji's face was gloomy. "Let's talk inside." Yang Xi obediently turned sideways to let Jiang Pengji in. His well-behaved manner was very much like a woman from a good family. Bah! He was really good at pretending. Jiang Pengji said angrily, "Are you going to confess yourself or do you want me to do it?" Yang Xi did not know how long Jiang Pengji had been listening outside. He reckoned that she had heard everything that should and should not have been heard. He closed his eyes and chose to confess. Jiang Pengji was angry and amused at the same time. "I don't care what personal grudges you have with Zhao Xiao, but you shouldn't hide it and not report it." Jiang Pengji attached great importance to the issue of principles, even if Yang Xi did not have any malicious intentions towards her. Moreover, if you want to deal with Zhao Xiao, at least clean up the traces. Don't let people follow the clues and trace it back to you. On one hand, You bear a grudge against Zhao Shao for insulting you, but on the other hand, you're tormenting your own reputation. Why bother? With Yang Xi's ability, if he really wanted to do this flawlessly, Jiang Pengji might not be able to find him so quickly. However, this guy was still showing off after making a mistake. He wished that the whole world could know how petty and vengeful he was. No matter how one looked at him, he deserved a beating. Yang Xi heard the protection and shielding in Jiang Pengji's words, and his mood immediately lightened up. I was wrong, my lord. You're right. Jiang Pengji could not be angry anymore. Yang Xi bore a grudge against Zhao Shao because the latter had a cheap mouth and insulted him. There was a reason for it. This is the only time. Don't do it again. After hearing this, Yang Xi secretly heaved a sigh of relief. He had passed this hurdle. Jiang Pengji said, That Zhao Shao. Pack him up and send him to Yang Tao. If he makes it in time, he'll be able to make it to Yang Jian's Memorial Day. Yang Xi replied, Yes. With this matter recorded by Jiang Pengji, Yang Xi became even more unscrupulous. Zhao Shao had been tormented unbearably for the past few days. He was lucky enough to keep his life, but he had become paranoid and anxious. Yang Xi asked the military doctor about Zhao Shao's current condition. The military doctor had a strange and conflicted expression on her face. The closed door is not stable. His lower body is damp and hot. He has symptoms of anal prolapse. Moreover, the qi in his spleen and kidneys is weak. His ascites has been leaking for a long time. The military doctor was originally a female soldier serving in the women's battalion. Because of a battle, she became lame. However, she did not want to retire and go home. She simply followed the doctor in the casualty camp and became an apprentice. She was extremely talented in medicine. After a few years, she could be considered to have surpassed her teacher. Zhao Shao's appearance was too tragic. He was afraid of male contact. In order to facilitate treatment, he could only be taken care of by the female doctor. The military doctor had seen countless injuries, such as missing arms and legs, having their stomachs and chests cut open by swords, and even having hemorrhoids. However, she had never seen a man who had his posterior forcefully pierced through and was badly mutilated. With one look, she could tell that the situation was very intense. This person won't be around for long. We'll have to clean him up and send him away. It doesn't matter whether we treat him or not, Yang Xi said. Is he awake now? The female doctor said, He's already awake, but he's still a little agitated, Yang Xi smiled. He wanted Zhao Shao to be agitated. If he could still remain calm and collected after experiencing such a great humiliation, Yang Xi would be worried. Zhao Shao was staring at the top of the tent with his eyes wide open. When he heard the sound of the tent flap being lifted, he thought that it was the shameless female doctors. He became even angrier. As a man, he had stripped naked in front of a woman and stuck out his chest, letting the other party see his embarrassing parts. Even he felt embarrassed and ashamed, but the woman's expression was calm. It could be imagined that the woman's behavior was unbearably dissolute. Yang Xi said, Hey, General Zhao, how have you been? Hearing the man's voice, Zhao Shao's body subconsciously trembled. He turned his head and looked. A familiar face came into view. It's you. Zhao Shao clenched his fists in grief and indignation and scolded, Get out. Not only did Yang Xi not leave, but he also walked forward and sized Zhao Shao up from head to toe. There was a hint of ridicule in his eyes. That day, General Zhao insulted me for being the son of a prostitute. Now, I want to ask General, how does it feel to be a prostitute? With just one sentence, Zhao Shao was so angry that he fainted. Seeing this, Yang Xi curled his lips in disinterest. Chapter 12:14. A scholar prefers death to humiliation. Zhao Shao slowly regained his breath. In his daze, he saw that Yang Xi was still there. Blood rushed to his head and he almost fainted again. I didn't want to kill you, nor did I humiliate you. Yang Xi sneered, his eyes flashing with mockery. Your life is quite valuable. You can't die now. It would have been fine if you died from anger, but you've recovered. It seems that even the heavens feel that this punishment isn't enough. They want you to continue living and suffer. Reflect on what you've done wrong in the past. Zhao Shao, this is fate. Zhao Shao was so angry that his anger surged. Just as he exerted force, He felt a tearing pain from the unspeakable place behind him. He was extremely ashamed and resentful. His enemy was humiliating him in front of him. He was so angry that his entire face turned purple. Seeing this, Yang Si smirked even more. Zhao Xiao wanted to rush over and tear his mouth apart. Humph! Are you done being naughty? Yang Si came out feeling refreshed, looking like he was flushed with success. If she didn't know about his feud with Zhao Xiao, Jiang Nongqin would have suspected that he'd done something worse than a beast. Yang Si pretended to be confused and asked with a smile, "Captain Jiang, what's naughty?" Jiang Nongqin laughed. "Naughty." Hearing the word naughty come out of Jiang Nongqin's mouth, Yang Si, who had always been shameless, felt embarrassed. He was an old man in his 30s. Being called naughty by a girl in the tone of an old mother lecturing her son, no matter how thick-skinned he would still feel embarrassed. "I won't offend people who don't offend me," Yang Si said with a thick-skinned face. "I was just being naughty. Don't do it again." Jiang Nongqin pursed her lips and held back her laughter. "My lord is summoning you for something. Don't be late." She came over to pass on a message and to keep an eye on Yang Si. If this person was too ruthless and angered Zhao Xiao to death, how would they answer to Yang Tao? Yang Si flicked the dust off his clothes and said seriously, "My lord must be summoning me for something urgent. I'll go over now." Zhang Pengji didn't have anything to ask Yang Si. She just wanted him to be the messenger to send Zhao Xiao to Yang Tao and to find out what Yang Tao wanted. Su Bei has been eliminated. Apart from Haozhou, Chenzhou, and Zhangzhou, we have taken over all the other territories in Dongqing. We don't have many choices left. Jiang Pengji pointed at the geomantic map. The hidden meaning was obvious. After a short rest, Yang Tao and Huang Song had to deal with one of them. Yang Si was a smart man. He understood what Jiang Pengji meant without further explanation. He narrowed his eyes and pondered. He muttered slowly, "If the territory of Dongqing is compared to a person, Haozhou and Chenzhou are the organs, and Zhangzhou is the feet. It was possible to survive without legs, but the internal organs were very important. Once they were dug out, even if they had 3 heads and 6 arms, they wouldn't be able to live for long. Even if it's just a small fight, it can still make people's stomach ache. Although it's not fatal, it's still irritating. What does the Lord think?" In Yang Si's opinion, he was still inclined to use a knife on Huang Song. First, Yang Tao had just formed an alliance with them, helping them restrain Huang Song and Su Bei's alliance. Although the alliance this time was for both sides to benefit from each other's needs, if they were to backstab each other as soon as they used up their manpower, it would be quite reproachful. Second, Huang Song's territory was in an awkward position. Chenzhou and Haozhou were to the south of Wanzhou, and Zhe County and Hu County were to the north. They were directly at the throat of Jiang Pengji's power. It was like a small circle within a large circle. Huang Song was afraid that Jiang Pengji would take the opportunity to annex him, and Jiang Pengji was also afraid that Huang Song would stir up trouble. If she didn't deal with Huang Song and instead went to fight Yang Tao, she would have to be completely out of her mind. Therefore, Jiang Pengji had Yang Si escort Zhao Xiao as a gesture of goodwill. Analyzing it from another perspective, this was also a strategy of befriending the distant and attacking the nearby. Yang Si's words were exactly what Jiang Pengji was thinking. Jiang Pengji smiled and said, "That's exactly what I meant. Is Jing Rong confident that you can handle this matter?" Yang Si stood up to accept the order. He bowed and said, "I won't let you down." Poor Zhao Xiao didn't know that after he was physically and mentally exhausted, he still had to meet the son of his old enemy. In this alliance, Yan Lin didn't approve of Yang Tao personally commanding the main army. However, his lord was stubborn, so Yan Lin could only take a step back. However, this was also the biggest concession he could make. As the lord, Jiang Pengji could still charge and break through enemy lines at the front lines, while Yang Tao could only squat in the rear and grow mushrooms. His bones were rusty. Although the march was boring, the thought of his father's murderer being right in front of him made Yang Tao feel refreshed. He was full of energy and vigor. He waited and waited. He waited for Su Pei to arrive. He waited anxiously, but Zhao Xiao still didn't show up. "My lord. Great news." Yang Tao yawned as he picked up his brush and read the bamboo slips. He wasn't good at paperwork. Usually, he could beg Yan Lin to write for him. But now that he was leading the army, Yan Lin already had a heavy burden on his shoulders. Yang Tao didn't want to add to his burden. Xiaoyang was such a good person. He couldn't possibly tire him out. While he was still in a daze, Yan Lin entered the tent like a gust of wind. Although he left in a hurry, he didn't lose his elegance. He was still elegant and charming. Great! Great news? Yang Tao suddenly came to his senses. The tip of his brush paused, and black dots of ink stained the bamboo slips. There was a genuine smile on Yan Lin's face. His joy was radiating from the inside out. Even his pure eyes were brimming with happiness. Xiaoyang, where did the joy come from? Yan Lin said, Zhao Shao has been found. Zhao Shao? Where is that thief now? Yang Tao's eyes widened in anger. The murderous aura had dispelled his original pure temperament, giving him a dignified air of a brave general. Yan Lin said, General Lanting's military advisor, Yang Si, has personally escorted Zhao Shao. He's waiting outside the tent. Yang Tao hurriedly said, Quick, invite him in. He then walked to the knife rack in the tent and took down a large sword. This was his late father, Yang Jian's favorite sword. It was also a rare keepsake that reminded Yang Tao of his father. He always carried this sword with him, hoping to use it to cut off Zhao Shao's head. Years ago, a bowl of poisoned wine caused Yang Jian to bleed from every orifice. His body convulsed for a day and a night before he died in extreme pain. Yang Tao still remembered how hopeless he was that day and night. He watched helplessly as his father died in pain. All these years, he had been imagining how he would avenge his father if Zhao Shao appeared in front of him. His long-cherished wish was about to come true. Yang Tao felt like he was living in a dream. Yang Tao craned his neck. He didn't expect Yang Si to be the only one who entered the tent. Where's Zhao Shao? Yang Tao resisted the urge to look around. More importantly, Yan Lin was still watching him. He didn't dare. A faint smile appeared on Yang Si's face. He said cautiously, This man doesn't look well. He shouldn't be seen in public. I don't want to dirty Lord Zheng's eyes and nose. Yang Tao let out an ah. His rising anger stopped for a moment because of Yang Si's honorific, and then gradually subsided. It was the first time someone called him that. What's wrong with Zhao Shao? Yan Lin's eyebrows flattened. He sharply noticed that Yang Si's words about eyes and nose were inappropriate. According to normal language habits, Yang Si should have said, Lord Zheng's eyes and nose. The addition of the word nose made Yan Lin overthink. Yang Si paused and said awkwardly, Zhao Shao has a chronic problem of rectal prolapse and incontinence. When he found out that he was going to see Lord Zhengza, he panicked and... Chapter 12:15. Rectal prolapse and incontinence? Yang Tao was slow to react and imagine the scene. He wrinkled his nose and showed a disgusted expression. Yang Si didn't seem to notice Yang Tao's reaction. He apologized on behalf of Jiang Pengji for not bringing Zhao Shao to Yang Tao immediately. Not to mention anything else, the looks of the talents in Jiang Pengji's camp were above average. Even Yang Si, who was a beast in human form, could pretend to be a gentleman with outstanding manners. It made people unconsciously let down their guard. After all, humans were visual animals. His ally's attitude was so good. He even sent his confidant to personally escort Zhao Shao. Yang Tao's resentment disappeared without a trace. He waved his hand and said, You can't blame Lanting. Zhao Shao is extremely cunning. It wasn't easy to capture him alive. If Zhao Shao hadn't been so good at escaping, Yang Tao wouldn't have been able to avenge his father now. He would have thrown Zhao Shao into a basin of venomous insects 800 years ago, and let him be devoured and torn apart by millions of poisonous insects. Yang Si didn't follow the script. Instead, he showed a strange expression. Yang Tao asked in surprise, Is there something wrong? Yang Si answered with a bitter smile. It's indeed difficult to say. Zhao Shao is cunning, but he's a fool who thinks he's smart. On the day the Barbican city fell, he stole a lot of money and prepared to disguise himself as a refugee to escape. Unfortunately, his disguise was too fake. A group of refugees with evil intentions mistook him for a single woman. Unfortunately, he was trapped in a wolf's den and lost his chastity in his old age. If not for that, my lord would have found Zhao Shao earlier and sent him to the Duke of Zhengze. Who knew that something unexpected would happen? That's why we were delayed. Yang Xi's implicit use of lost his chastity in his old age was really clever. It fully demonstrated the quality of an experienced driver. Yang Tao was stunned. He didn't understand the meaning immediately. Yan Lin, who was beside him, understood and had a strange expression on his face. Yang Xi said that Zhao Shao had rectal prolapse and incontinence. Now he said that he was trapped in a wolf's den and lost his chastity in his old age. The benevolent see benevolence, the wise see wisdom. Yang Tao was slow. When he understood the meaning of Yang Xi's words, he almost choked on his own saliva. That Zhao Shao. Did he really encounter such a tragedy? Yang Tao had a horrified look on his face as a trace of disgust flashed across his eyes. If I remember correctly, Zhao Shao's age is not much different from my father's by 2 years. At this age he actually… Cough cough, this is retribution. Yang Tao really wanted to meet those brave warriors. What kind of eyes did they have? How could a man in his 40s have the heart to do such a thing? It was one thing for him to kiss her, after all. It wasn't a rare thing for men to be attracted to him. But why did he mistake Zhao Shao for a delicate woman? An old man in his 40s. A beautiful woman? His living environment had limited Yang Tao's imagination. Yang Xi echoed, yeah, who said it wasn't? His mission this time was to strengthen the friendship of his allies, and at the same time, to test their intentions and let them see their sincerity. Yang Tao hated Zhao Shao so much. So why didn't Yang Xi follow his wishes and step on Zhao Shao a few more times? Not only could he vent his anger, but he could also strengthen their friendship, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. The 2 of them chatted happily, unbeknownst to them that Zhao Shao was so ashamed and resentful that he wanted nothing more than to find a wall and kill himself. The female doctor from before had said that Zhao Shao's illness was that the door couldn't close properly, and it couldn't keep the dirty stuff in his intestines. In other words, his anus was so loose that it didn't have any elasticity. If he exerted just a little more strength, he might incontinence, and the dirty stuff that had gathered in his intestines would be excreted uncontrollably. He knew about his illness and had been careful not to make any big movements, trying his best to maintain his final demeanor. Who knew that Yang Xi was so despicable that he revealed his true intentions when Zhao Shao's nerves were tense? This scared Zhao Shao so much that he loosened his grip on his lower abdomen, and the soft, smelly stuff flowed down his anus and stained his clothes. Zhao Shao couldn't forget the smile and mockery in Yang Xi's eyes before he left. He was so ashamed and resentful that he wanted to die. However, Zhao Shao soon had no time to resent Yang Xi, because he was about to face a life-and-death crisis. Zhao Shao had seen Yang Tao before. At that time, Yang Tao was just a little boy who followed his father Yang Jian around. Many years had passed, and the kid from that day had grown up to be a threat to his life. This caused Zhao Shao's expression to darken. Even though he had mentally prepared himself, Yang Tao didn't expect Zhao Shao to be in such a sorry state. His exposed skin was covered in bruises that hadn't faded yet. Zhao Shao! Yang Tao called out tentatively, holding the broadsword in his hand. Zhao Shao snorted coldly, not deigning to talk to Yang Tao. Yang Tao said, "You're still being stubborn even when death is at your doorstep." Only then did Zhao Shao open his mouth and say mockingly, "Do you think you'll let me go if I beg for mercy?" Yang Tao shook his head. "Of course not. The hatred of my father's murder is absolutely irreconcilable. You dared to commit such beastly acts back then, so you should know what will happen today." Zhao Shao snorted heavily and said with disdain, "Your father Yang Jian deserved to die. Even if he didn't die by my hands, he wouldn't have lived for long." A mere insect egg dared to hit a rock. Such an overconfident insect won't be able to escape death sooner or later. Yang Tao drew his broadsword angrily, but stopped just as he was about to chop down. His father, Yang Jian, had suffered for a day and a night before dying in agony. If he killed Zhao Shao with a single slash, wouldn't he be letting this traitor off easy? Zhao Shao broke out in a cold sweat. Once again, he lost control of his anus and emitted a foul stench. This reaction made Zhao Shao both angry and fearful. Yang Tao also smelled something fishy. He looked at Zhao Shao with a faint smile. Zhao Shao was extremely embarrassed and regretted that Yang Tao hadn't slashed down with his broadsword. If he had died, he wouldn't have had to suffer Yang Tao's humiliation. Zhao Shao forced himself to maintain his dignity. "You don't believe me?" What's your father's background? So what if he became an official through a military career? He's just a lowly military officer with a shallow foundation. Such a despicable person wanted to use the merit of rescuing the emperor to bypass the aristocratic families and take control of Zhangzhou's Dongmen County. Who gave him the face to do so? He thinks he's a big shot, but he doesn't know how many people's interests he's hindered. Even if I hadn't done anything, your father Yang Jian wouldn't have been able to escape the hands of others. Speaking of which, you should be thanking me. If I hadn't intervened and saved Yang Jian's life, do you think you'd still be alive? It's because Yang Jian's death intimidated a group of restless people that you're still alive. Although Zhao Xiao was a despicable person, he was able to become a famous scholar in Dongmen County. Yang Tao's anger surged again. He yelled, "You old bastard." Just as he was about to step forward, Yan Lin raised a hand to stop the enraged Yang Tao. "Xiaoyang," Yan Lin said, "calm down. Don't be affected by him." Yang Tao quickly calmed down, but he still felt indignant. "This person has a glib tongue and can distort the truth," Yan Lin said. "He's not lying." The situation at that time was indeed not good. He had reminded Yang Jian many times to be careful, but Yang Jian trusted others too much and was overconfident. That's why he fell for it. Yang Tao stood rooted to the ground. He gripped the hilt of his sword tightly, as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Chapter 12:16. Yang Jian's family background wasn't low. His ancestors had once been high-ranking officials. However, this bit of foundation was nothing compared to the local aristocratic families of the East Gate County, which had many meritorious deeds and deep roots. Yang Jian treated them with sincerity, but he didn't know that they were just pretending. Yan Lin didn't want Yang Tao to follow in his father's footsteps. He didn't want Yang Tao to be like his father, foolishly treating wolves as his best friend. It will be the Lord's death anniversary in a few days. It won't be too late to kill Zhao Xiao then and pray to the Lord's spirit in heaven. Yang Tao didn't say anything. Yan Lin continued, "I sent people to catch many non-poisonous snakes. Although they are not as powerful as the basin, they can still be used." Zhao Xiao trembled and looked up at Yan Lin in disbelief. He didn't expect that Yan Lin, who looked like a gentleman, would imitate the devil concubine and give Yang Tao such an evil idea. Not only did he come up with the idea, he even caught a bunch of snakes. "You can't spoil your son like this." "Ah." Yang Tao was shaken. He said reluctantly, "Fine, let's do it. Don't let Zhao Xiao die too easily." Zhao Xiao shouted anxiously, "Yang Tao, don't you dare." Humans were born with a fear of snakes. When Zhao Xiao thought of countless long worms crawling and biting his body, he regretted it again. It would have been better if Yang Tao had chopped him down. It would have been better than living like this. Yang Tao was as vicious as a snake or a scorpion. Zhao Xiao used to be afraid of death, but he later realized that what was worse than death was living a life worse than death. "Why wouldn't I dare?" Yang Tao said matter-of-factly. "Avenging my father is a righteous thing to do." Zhao Xiao felt like he had fallen into an ice cellar. He was stunned. He thought that Yang Tao would care about his reputation and not use torture like the basin. He didn't expect Yang Tao to be even more ruthless. You will regret this." Zhao Xiao clenched his teeth. "You tortured a famous scholar. You will be condemned by everyone." Zhao Xiao's biggest advantage now was his family background and identity. Unfortunately, the chips in his hands were not as heavy as he thought. If his family background was really useful, Zhao Xiao wouldn't have been humiliated by a few gangsters. This was a chaotic world, and playing politics was not suitable for this era. Only strength was the most powerful capital. Yang Tao said righteously, "Not avenging the father for the son, this is the behavior that will be condemned by all." When Zhao Xiao poisoned Yang Jian, why didn't he think about what would happen to him today? Serves you right. Yang Si waited until the day of Yang Jian's death was over before he hurried back. At the same time, he brought along Yang Tao's document for Jiang Pengji. "Sai, you really can't judge a book by its cover." That Yan Xiaoyang looked so gentle, but I didn't expect him to be so ruthless. Yang Si snatched Qiguan Rang's feather fan and fanned himself, causing Qiguan Rang to roll his eyes. She asked, "Yan Xiaoyang? What happened to him?" Yang Si clicked his tongue. That Yan Xiaoyang threw Zhao Xiao into the snake pit on the day of Yang Jian's death. Who knew what snake cave he had dug to find so many non-venomous black spike snakes? Every snake had their teeth pulled out, and they had to starve for a few days. TSK, Zhao Xiao was stripped naked and shivered in the snake pit for a whole day. In the end, he was so exhausted that he was scared to death. His death was much worse than Yang Jian's. There were many details that Yang Si hadn't mentioned yet. After Zhao Xiao was stripped naked, his condition of anal prolapse worsened. The black spike snakes were starving. They had the heart to eat humans, but they didn't have the teeth to eat humans. In the end, they surrounded Zhao Xiao and burrowed into any hole they could find. You can figure out the deeper content on your own. If a life for a life was a business deal, Zhao Xiao's deal was too much of a loss. His death was 100 times more tragic than Yang Jian's. Because Zhao Xiao's death was too tragic, Yang Si was too embarrassed to continue defaming him. After Zhang Pengji heard this, she said confidently, "I'm afraid it was to make an example out of him." Yang Tao's personality wasn't gentle, but he wasn't dignified either. As a lord, he was still lacking. From Zhang Pengji's understanding of the past few days, Yang Tao's forces weren't united. The original Dongqing and Nanqing's forces had formed two different groups. The power struggle between the various parties was intense. Yan Lin didn't hesitate to gamble his name and use such cruel methods. It wasn't just to avenge Yang Jian, it was also to intimidate those who were ready to make trouble. It was simple and brutal, but very effective. With Su Bei's death, Huang Song withdrew his troops, and Yang Tao prepared to lead his troops back to Zhangzhou. Zhang Pengji's side also started to get busy. Zhe County was the Su family's base camp. Su Bei was dead, but the other members of the Su family were still there. If Zhang Pengji wanted to completely control Zhe County, she couldn't bypass them. In comparison, Hu County was much simpler. In the past few years, Hu County had experienced three masters: Wu Ma Shang, Su Fei, and Su Pei. Its vitality had been greatly damaged. The aristocratic families and squires didn't have the ability to cause trouble. They could only let Zhang Pengji do whatever she wanted. Zhang Pengji didn't have much else, but she had many troops, horses, and machetes. Of course, the local forces in Zhe County couldn't cause trouble even if they wanted to. Why? Remember when Chang Yuan and Qin Gong conquered Zhe County and secretly pretended to be bandits to plunder and loot everywhere? That torment greatly damaged the strength of each family. Zhang Pengji was too domineering, so they could only temporarily submit to her and plan for the future. Zhe County was their home ground. How could they let a strong foreign dragon occupy it? Zhang Pengji really overpowered the local tyrant and placed her own people in the most important positions in Zhe County. She had Han Yu in the civil and Qin Gong in the military. Both of them were flattered. They thought that based on their situation, they would at least need to be observed for a while before they could really be put in important positions. Han Yu had a strong foundation in Zhe County, and Qin Gong was also a local of Zhe County. If they wanted to cause trouble, it would be too easy. Zhang Pengji wasn't worried. It was impossible for the aristocrats of Zhe County to instigate them to defect. War is fun for a while, but the aftermath is a crematorium. This was what Zhang Pengji had been thinking for the past few days. If she didn't have more and more people working for her, such heavy labor could really crush people to death. As the Lord, Zhang Pengji took a break from her busy schedule. She didn't even have time to take a nap before Wei Ci caught her. "Zi Xiao," Wei Ci said. "A letter from Wanzhou." "Letter?" Zhang Pengji took it, opened the seal, and took out the letter inside. She read 10 lines at a glance. Master Wenfu is sick. After Cheng Sun's death, there was only the end of the war. Chang Yuan begged to carry his spirit to the north. Wei Ci sighed. He lost his son when he was middle-aged, and the old sent off the young. Master is also old, and he can't stand the stimulation. Cheng Cheng's previous life was much more miserable than this one. Not only did he lose his eldest son, but he also lost his second son, Cheng Yuan. His 3 daughters died in the prime of their lives. Madame Cheng, who had been in love with him all her life, couldn't stand the continuous blows and died of illness. On the way to the south, only Cheng Cheng was left. When the Zhang dynasty was established, Cheng Cheng, as the first historian, went against the heavens and the earth. Later, he helped the emperor establish a relatively perfect examination system to select people. He unknowingly offended many influential families. No matter how others attacked him or how the influential families tempted him, he turned a blind eye. Chapter 12:17. Cheng Cheng's condition was far more serious than what was described in the letter. At one point, he was unconscious. All the famous doctors in Wanzhou were invited to take a look. Some gave him prescriptions while others vaguely told his family to be mentally prepared. Mrs. Cheng refused to accept reality. She changed her tearful dejection and went to ask if there were any better doctors. The result was disappointing. The Cheng family was in a gloomy mood. Cheng Yuan was even more devastated. He had to organize the funeral of his eldest brother, Cheng Sun, and take care of his seriously ill father and his exhausted mother. Not long after, he looked a lot more haggard and his whole body was thinner. Cheng Yuan regretted it more than once. If he had sent someone to capture Cheng Sun earlier and not given him the chance to kill himself, perhaps he wouldn't have died. However, he also knew that Cheng Sun was ready to die. How could it be so easy to stop him? Second Lang Jun, someone has sent a visitation card. Cheng Yuan took a deep breath and tried to dispel the tiredness of a sleepless night. He reached out and took the visitation cards. He glanced at the contents and signatures of the cards and forced himself to be alert. Quickly bring Master Yuan Jing and Master Feng to the side hall. I'll go over after I wash up. Don't neglect our guests. Cheng Cheng, Feng Ran, and Yuan Jing were colleagues and had a good personal relationship. Now that Cheng Cheng was seriously ill, the other two naturally had to visit. Cheng Yuan braced himself to receive them. Feng Ran asked about Cheng Cheng's condition. Master Yuan Jing frowned and was deep in thought. My father vomited several times last night. He has a high fever. The doctor used all kinds of methods, but it didn't work. Instead, his condition is getting worse. Cheng Yuan thought of his father lying unconscious on the hospital bed. His eyes turned red. When he was seriously ill and unconscious, he was still muttering, "Damn." It was obvious how much the death of his eldest brother, Cheng Sun, had affected his father. Cheng Yuan didn't even dare to sleep now. He was afraid that Cheng Cheng would die. Thank you for visiting, Master. If my father wakes up, I will send a servant to inform you immediately. Feng Ren sighed and thought of Cheng Cheng's dream a long time ago. Cheng Sun's death was foreshadowed. Thinking of Feng Ju and Feng Jin, Feng Ren couldn't help but have the same worry. Just when Feng Ren was about to speak, Master Yuan Jing, who was at the side, said, May I ask if Gong Liao knows when Fu's birth date? Cheng Yuan was stunned and shook his head in confusion. May I know what you need my father's 8 characters for? The primordial era was different from other eras. People attached great importance to the 8 characters of one's birth. Every time a baby was born, its parents would write down its 8 characters and lock it in a box that had been prepared in advance. This was because newborn children had weak yang qi and could easily attract evil beings. Locking the 8 characters was equivalent to locking the child's life. The parents would only open the box when the child reached the age of engagement. Under normal circumstances, only a few extremely close relatives would know the date of birth. As a son, Cheng Yuan was not among them. Master Yuan Jing said, Wan Fu's illness is very serious this time. I'm worried that it might be the work of evil spirits. At that time, people were still very superstitious. As Master Yuan Jing was a capable old faker, no one doubted his words. Cheng Yuan told his mother about this matter. Mrs. Cheng seemed to have grabbed onto the last straw and hurriedly wrote down the 8 characters of her husband, Cheng Cheng. When Master Yuan Jing received Cheng Cheng's 8 characters, he frowned at a glance. When he calculated it carefully, his eyebrows were even tighter than before. Mrs. Cheng asked anxiously, Master, what's wrong with my husband? Could it be that he's possessed by evil spirits? Master Yuan Jing pondered for a while and said, It's a blessing in disguise. Mrs. Cheng, don't worry. Wan Fu's serious illness is an auspicious sign. Mrs. Cheng was stunned. Her eldest son committed suicide by hitting the wall, and her husband's life was hanging by a thread. Such a tragic situation was an auspicious sign? Her expression changed. Master Yuan Jing quickly tried to salvage the situation. Mrs. Cheng, I'll tell you the truth. Wan Fu's 8 characters are extremely dangerous. Master Yuan Jing said, according to fate, a man loses 2 sons and a daughter when he's middle-aged. After a few years of hardship, he loses his wife one after another. This is the fate set by the heavens. It's extremely difficult to change the mortal body. Wenfu is seriously ill now because his fate has been changed by external forces. The originally dangerous fate has turned into an auspicious one. With such a big change, the mortal body can't bear it. Naturally, he'll be sick for a while. At midnight tonight, Wenfu's condition should improve. He'll wake up at dawn. Mrs. Chung saw that Master Yuanjing was so sure. She was less worried. If that's the case, my husband will be safe? Master Yuanjing nodded. Of course. Mrs. Chung said, I'm not a member of the Xian men. I don't know about fate, but I do know that it's difficult to change one's fate. Master Yuanjing said, it's difficult to change one's fate, but it's not for people with great luck. Those who follow the will of heaven will be treated well. With Master Yuanjing's guarantee, Mrs. Chung felt more at ease. Feng Ran had a strange expression. He asked privately, is what you said true? Regardless of whether others believed it or not, Feng Ran didn't. What Master Yuanjing said was very suspicious. He didn't sound like a fortune teller. Instead, he sounded like a brainless army that Jiang Pengji hired at a high price. What did he mean by, those who follow the will of heaven will be treated well? From a political perspective, didn't it imply that the will of heaven was on Jiang Pengji's side? Was going against her the same as going against the will of heaven? The emperors in history had the same temperament. They liked to cheat the gods. There would always be anomalies before and after they were born. It was as if they weren't destined to be the son of heaven if they didn't have anomalies. For example, the crops in their hometown had 9 ears on one stalk, the house was lit up the night before one was born, and the mother dreamed of the son when she was pregnant. Such mythical content was just political propaganda and fooling the people. Master Yuanjing couldn't help but laugh. Of course it's true. He told the truth. Whether others believed it or not was none of his business. Not to mention that others didn't believe it. Master Yuanjing didn't want to believe it either. It wasn't a good thing that the will of heaven was unpredictable. Cheng Cheng's fate could be changed by external forces. The fate of the real son of heaven could also be changed. Feng Ren frowned. The balance in his heart gradually tilted. I'll send you 2 sets of the 8 characters tomorrow. Can you read them? There's no need to be too detailed. Seeing the end of Cheng Sun and Cheng Yuan, Feng Ren was also worried about his 2 sons. Master Yuanjing said, there's no need to send me off. Feng Ren blurted out, why? Master Yuanjing said in a narrating tone, Xianda wants to read the fortunes of 2nd Lang Jun and 3rd Lang Jun, right? Feng Ren said, which parent in the world is willing to see their children die before their parents? 3rd Lang Jun should have a rich and noble life. He deviated from the orthodox path but had an adventure. 2nd Lang Jun is different. His official career is bumpy and he's depressed. Master Yuanjing said, however, their fate has changed. My cultivation is limited. I can't see what it looks like after their fate has changed. Their fate has changed too. Feng Ren's mood was like a roller coaster. It was up and down. Yes, Master Yuanjing said, but you can rest assured that there's no blood disaster for now. In other words, no matter what the outcome was, both of them should be able to survive. Feng Ren had an indescribable feeling in his heart. He said after a while, it's good that they're alive. Chapter 12:18. Zuda, what are you thinking about? Master Yuanjing saw that Tang Yao was lost in thought and the tea was spilling. He could not help but wake him up. Tang Yao was shocked. He almost got scalded by the teapot. He quickly put the hot teapot on the tea mat and returned to his normal sitting position. Master, I was distracted just now. Master Yuanjing sighed. What were you thinking about just now? Tang Yao stuttered. His mind was in a mess. There was too much to think about. I was thinking about Master Cheng's house. Tang Yao respected his master too much. He was not even willing to answer half-heartedly. He told the truth. There are 2 things. Obeying Lu Shi is obeying the heavenly mandate. Master once said that the changes in the Zhou Tian are endless. Therefore, the mysteries of heaven cannot be revealed and fate cannot be calculated. As for the 2 Langjuns of the Feng family, what you can say is definitely what you can say. Then, is there anything that you can't say? I have been analyzing things recently and I feel that. Tang Yao's voice became softer and softer as he spoke. His face was full of worry. His initial impression of Jiang Pengji was almost zero. However, with the things that happened and the changes in the past few years, he slowly changed his opinion. Even though there was some improvement, it was hard for Tang Yao to accept that Lu Shi was the real emperor. However, his master admired her so much. Tang Yao could only hold it in no matter how uncomfortable he felt. Master Yuanjing smiled. If the world is unified, which feudal lord do you want it to be? Tang Yao was stunned by the question. He almost bit his tongue. This. I have never seen the situation under the rule of other feudal lords. I don't know how the people's livelihood is. I can't compare, so I dare not say anything. Even though he was born in an aristocratic family, Tang Yao also wanted the people to live a better life and the world to be peaceful. He insisted on the idea of aristocratic families being the orthodoxy. He felt that this idea could help maintain peace and protect the interests of the aristocratic families at the same time. From this perspective, Tang Yao's ambition was the same as many scholars. They were different routes to the same destination. You're right. Staying in one place is like looking at the sky from the bottom of a well. You can't see more. Only when you travel thousands of miles, see mountains and seas, and experience the prosperity of the world can you compare the advantages and disadvantages of different places. Master Yuanjing smiled. He could tell that Tang Yao was avoiding the question, but he did not ask further. Besides, I never said that obeying Lu Shi is obeying the mandate of heaven. To be precise, it should be Lu Shi obeying the mandate of heaven. Tang Yao shuddered. It was the first time he heard such a firm judgment from Master Yuanjing. He had mixed feelings in his heart, as if countless seasonings had been spilled. The two Langjuns of the Feng family are safe from the blood disaster for the time being, but some people might not be happier to live than to die. Mr. Yuanjing sighed and said, "Think about it. It might not be a good thing for a person with ambition to be trapped in a small place in the wilderness." Tang Yao blinked and asked hesitantly, "Are you referring to Feng Erlang or Feng Sanlang?" Combined with Master Yuanjing's previous words, Jiang Pengji followed the will of the heavens. Her future was limitless. Feng Jin, who had followed her for many years, would not end up in such a situation. If it was not Feng Jin, then it would be Feng Ju. If it was Feng Ju, Tang Yao shook his head and said, "Seeking benevolence and obtaining benevolence. Ruofeng Sanlang ending up like this is probably what he wanted." It was Master Yuanjing's turn to be surprised. "Zuda knows Feng Sanlang?" "Not really, but I know him a little." Feng Sanlang was initiated in the Feng family school. Then, he studied in Shangjing Government School for a few years. His classmates and friends are my friends. According to my friends, Feng Sanlang is not someone who is obsessed with power. He doesn't seem to have any ambition to rule the world. When he was young, he was a little rebellious. Outsiders have different opinions about him. Tang Yao shook his head with a regretful expression. Master Yuanjing was interested. He listened to his student talk about Feng Ju's past. As a millennium-old family, the Feng family indeed had its uniqueness. Apart from the family's upright conduct, excellent knowledge and self-restraint, they also had impressive fertility and education skills. It was as if all the talented people were reincarnated into the Feng family. She gave birth to children well and taught them well as well. The Golden Scale Academy also borrowed the Feng family's education methods. Feng Ren even wanted to bring out the Feng family's rules. There were a few thick scrolls with thousands of family rules. Master Yuanjing's heart trembled when he read them. Rebellious? Feng Sanlang? Master Yuanjing was surprised. He looked at Feng Ren, Feng Jin, and then at Feng Gue and his two sons who came from their family to visit their old father for the new year. It was not an exaggeration to say that they were a family of gentlemen. How could such a rebellious son appear in such a family? Tang Yao nodded his head heavily. He wore an expression of jealousy, but it was not exactly jealousy. I heard that Feng Sanlang is extremely talented and learns at lightning speed. I don't see him studying hard usually, but his results are always hard to catch up to. Feng Ju was probably the kind of scholar who ate, drank, and played all day and still managed to get first place and sit firmly in the top 3. It would be fine if he was a good student, but he was a scum in the eyes of many teachers. This made people very uncomfortable. By right, the children of the Feng family were mostly gentle gentlemen. However, Fengju was different. He was rebellious and despised etiquette and the family. Dongqing was particular about filial piety. There was once an official teacher who asked his students to write essays to praise his parents. Fengju, who was only 12 years old, wrote an essay about how his parents were unkind. The content was based on the words of a great scholar from the previous dynasty. What is the relationship between a father and a son? The original intention was to express one's lust and desire. What is the relationship between a son and a mother? For example, in the storage bottle, there was a discussion centered on leave, and it became famous. Of course, it also slapped others in the face. At that time, Feng Ran was still the head of the secretariat. It was definitely true love that he did not beat Fengju to death. He was like this to his parents and even more indifferent to the family. Everything he did was out of his heart. In layman's terms, I can do whatever I want, and no one can control me. To reiterate, it was true love that Feng Ran did not beat Fengju to death. Perhaps that's the case. Feng Sanlang's personality is a little eccentric. Otherwise, he wouldn't have done something like helping Huang Song. Tang Yao frowned. It was still a pain in the ass to talk about this. Fengju was from a noble family, but he actually turned to Huang Song, the grandson of a eunuch, when the world was in chaos. Tang Yao really wanted to use a hammer to crack open his head to see if it was filled with paste and seawater. Although Tang Yao in his previous life turned to Huang Song in the end, Huang Song's power was vaguely similar to that of the leader of the feudal vassals. Chapter 12:19. Huang Song's family background was a shortcoming that could not be ignored. Ordinary aristocratic families looked down on him. It was the right time to become an official. Not only would he not lower himself, but he could also help Huang Song and increase his bargaining chips. If they waited for Huang Song to conquer the world before relying on him, it would just be the icing on the cake, and Huang Song wouldn't even care. Who would have thought that Jiang Pengji, the bandit, would emerge as a new force? She single-handedly muddled the situation, and in the end, she made a beautiful comeback. Are you stupid? He was indeed a fool. Where was Fengju? Why would Huang Song, who was poor and had no foundation, need Fengju's help? Tang Yao and Feng Jin's original thoughts were very similar. Since Fengju was already so rebellious, he might as well go into the sea and become a lord to conquer the world. He was the lord and he was the strategist. If Fengju's business improved, the Feng group would still be his most solid trump card. Wasn't this better than relying on Huang Song? To make a common analogy, the N generations of super-rich people didn't start their own businesses, but instead helped ordinary middle-class kids to start their own businesses. His brain must have been flooded with water. All in all, he did not understand the mind of a prodigy. Feng Sanlang became an official and helped Huang Song, not for fame, not for profit, and not to show his ambition and cleanse the world. Tang Yao thought of something, and a suspicious blush appeared on his face. He deliberated and said, maybe he helped Huang Song for another reason? If Huang Song's army is defeated, Feng Sanlang's life will not be in danger, but he will be trapped in the middle of the wilderness. Perhaps that will be exactly what he wants. The more he said, the more Tang Yao believed in his own judgment. He rubbed his hands excitedly as if he had discovered a piece of gossip. What kind of eyesight did Master Yuanjing have? How could he not see through a student's imagination? According to Tang Yao's logic, Feng Ran did not beat his son, Fengju, to death because of his father's true love for his son. Fengju helped Huang Song wholeheartedly without asking for anything else. Maybe it was also some kind of true love? Haha, this kind of flawless logic is great. Master Yuanjing felt exhausted. He vaguely understood the real reason why Fengju helped Huang Song. Speaking of which, Feng Sanlang is quite similar to me when I was young. Tang Yao exclaimed and looked up at Yuanjing. Similar. Very similar. Master Yuanjing could not help but laugh. High talent, arrogant, and self-centered. It was precisely because there was no difficulty in learning anything that he came up with the idea that everyone else is stupid, but I'm the only smart one. On one hand, he felt that nothing in the world could be too difficult for him. On the other hand, he was tirelessly looking for things that could frustrate him. Naturally, this is also the reason why I set up the Tao of having students everywhere. He felt that he was too smart. He had to find something difficult to stump him, or else it would be too boring. Life was so long. Was he going to be bored and idle away his entire life? Dispirited my ass. Let's get high. Of course, such chunibu thoughts were something that only came to him when he was young. After years of accumulation and growth, Mr. Yuanjing really liked the feeling of teaching and educating people. He followed his own path seriously. Feng Ju was most likely the same. Perhaps to Feng Sanlang, helping an impossible person to ascend the world is a very interesting thing. Master Yuanjing smiled bitterly and said, although I've never met him, Feng Sanlang made me feel like I was looking at my younger self. It was unknown if he had already found his own Tao, or if he was still blindly moving forward. If it's the former, he won't have any regrets even if he loses, right? Because he didn't know what he really wanted, he would not feel regret even if he lost it after wasting so many years. When Feng Ju really matured and looked back, would he feel heartache and regret? Master Yuanjing sighed. That night, at the Chung mansion. It's gone, it's really gone. The doctor tested Chung Cheng's temperature. Indeed, the fever had started to go down. The servant girl in the room immediately passed the good news to Mrs. Cheng, Cheng Yuan, and Cheng Sanyang, who were waiting anxiously outside. When the three of them heard the good news, they immediately cried tears of joy. It was good that the fever had gone down. If Cheng collapsed, their backbone would be gone. Mrs. Cheng put her palms together gratefully and said, Son, remember to prepare a generous gift tomorrow and personally thank Master. Cheng Yuan nodded heavily with his eyes red. They endured for a few more hours. Dawn broke, and the first ray of sunlight broke through the clouds. He's awake, Master is awake. Good news came one after another. Mrs. Cheng walked excitedly to Cheng Cheng's bed with the help of her children. Wen Fu. Madam Cheng was very emotional. Tears welled up in her eyes and rolled down her cheeks. Cheng felt his body heavy. He couldn't move his limbs. His eyelids were so heavy as if they were filled with lead water. He couldn't open his eyes no matter how hard he tried. When he was seriously ill, he still had some consciousness and could hear the sounds of the outside world. Hearing that his relatives were so worried about him, Cheng Cheng's sorrow for losing his eldest son lessened a little. He opened his eyes with difficulty and flicked his fingers a few times. His blurry vision gradually became clear. He felt that he had been lying there for a long time. His body and bones were so numb that they didn't feel like his own. It took him a while to recover. Madam. Cheng Cheng's eyes turned and fell on his second son and daughter who were kneeling at the side. His heart warmed. He was about to raise his hand, but before he could raise it too high, his wife held it tightly. Cheng Cheng forced a weak smile. Your husband has woken up. This is a happy occasion. Don't cry. You guys should also persuade her. Crying too much will hurt her eyes. Cheng Yuan and his sister went up to persuade Mrs. Cheng. The family of four was surrounded by a warm atmosphere. There was a saying in the world that illness came like a landslide and went away like spinning silk. This saying was not suitable for Cheng Cheng. The doctor felt his pulse and was surprised to find that Cheng Cheng's body seemed to have no hidden dangers other than being a little weak. On the contrary, because of this serious illness, the stagnant qi of illness had been released from his body. He would recover after resting for a while. This is really strange. I've never heard of this before. The doctor sighed. Mrs. Cheng's heart skipped a beat. She told Cheng Cheng about Yuanjing's words. Sir is really straightforward. Cheng Cheng looked surprised and said, Madam, you don't know this. When I was seriously ill, I faintly felt that my body was getting lighter and lighter. There seemed to be countless sounds in my ears. Not long after, I had a mysterious dream. There were only a few scenes in the dream, but the contents of the dream confirmed Sir's assertion. I lost 2 sons and a daughter, and even my wife died of illness. Mrs. Cheng's heart skipped a beat. She quickly grabbed Cheng Cheng's hand. What should we do? Cheng Cheng said. Didn't Sir say that his fate has changed? Great misfortune has turned into great fortune. This is already a blessing from God. The death of his eldest son could not be saved, but Cheng Cheng really did not want to lose his other 2 children. Mrs. Cheng said, In the future, I will do more good deeds. I only hope that God will count this good karma on Sun Er's head. I hope that he will have no worries in his next life. Since such a mysterious thing had happened, Mrs. Cheng also believed in the words of accumulating good deeds. Cheng Cheng said, Yes, your husband will be with you. He held his wife in his arms. The husband and wife remained silent. Chang thought about more things in his heart, which strengthened his belief. What he was doing now was beneficial to the people's wisdom. If he really succeeded, would it not be a good deed that would be passed down for generations? Chapter 12:20. The news of Su Pei's defeat spread like wildfire. When Huang Song found out about it, he locked himself in his study for 2 days. The officials in the tent were deeply worried, afraid that this matter would completely destroy Huang Song's fighting spirit. If he lost his fighting spirit, what was the point of fighting? In the early hours of the 3rd day, Huang Song walked out of the study with a normal expression, as if he had not been the one who had been locked up for the past 2 days. Huaijie, Yumo. Why are you here? Huang Song saw 2 familiar figures standing in front of the study and called out to them. The 2 of them immediately turned around and bowed. Feng Ju said, "Naturally, we were worried about you, Lord. That's why we waited here. We didn't expect you to come out so soon." Before Huang Song went into seclusion, he had instructed that no one was to disturb him. Even Feng Ju did not dare to barge in. "It's my fault. I've made you worry for nothing." Huang Song was startled and said guiltily, "Recently, the situation has been grim. I'm a little frustrated, so I wanted to be alone and analyze the pros and cons." The sage also said that one should reflect on oneself 3 times a day. Naturally, I have to reflect on myself and find my mistakes and shortcomings to calm my restless mood. I'm fine now. You don't have to worry. Feng Ju and Cheng Jing exchanged a look. They had thought that Huang Song had been affected by Su Pei's death. Now, it seemed that not only had Huang Song not collapsed, but his fighting spirit had also been stimulated. This was what they were willing to see. If Huang Song was a piece of trash that couldn't be helped, it would be disappointing. Cheng Jing gave Feng Ju a look, and the latter understood. Feng Ju could ask some offensive questions, but Cheng Jing could not. After all, Huang Song's trust in the 2 of them was different. Feng Ju asked casually, "What have you realized in the past 2 days, Lord?" "I've reflected on many problems. For example, how did Lanting get to where she is today, where I'm lacking compared to her?" Huang Song's expression was normal, without a hint of displeasure. "After some reflection, I have to admit that I'm not as good as Lanting." Huang Song had indeed seriously reflected on himself for 2 days. He had read the news of the past countless times. Each time he read it, he had a different understanding. The more he read, the more frightened he became. Feng Ju said, "My lord, don't belittle yourself. Everyone has their strengths and weaknesses. The Duke of Lanting is not perfect. Huaijie, you don't have to console me. I can still judge right from wrong. If he could win, then he could win. If he couldn't win, then he couldn't win. There was nothing to be afraid of. Forcefully belittling Lanting is just deceiving yourself and others." A hint of a smile appeared on Huang Song's face. His burning eyes carried a bit of sharpness. The situation in the world is changing rapidly. Even if it's not as good now, it's not impossible to catch up in the future. Seeing that Huang Song was full of vigor, the 2 of them completely put down their worries. It is not too late to mend the dungeon after the sheep is lost. Huang Song continued, "When Lanting finishes resting, he will most likely find an excuse to attack me." Cheng Jing and Feng Ju did not say anything. This was the consensus of everyone. Although Lanting is strong, I am not weak either. If she wants to beat me, she'll have to show her skills. Huang Song's expression was solemn. He suddenly took a step back and clasped his hands in front of his chest. He said to the 2 of them, "Huaijie and Yumo, please let bygones be bygones and help me get through this." Huang Song's action was beyond their expectations, but they could also feel Huang Song's seriousness and sincerity, so they naturally didn't dare to be negligent. "Yes." Huang Song had just walked out of the study. At this moment, he led the 2 of them into the study again. The 3 of them had a secret discussion for several hours. When they left, Feng Ju and Cheng Jing walked side by side halfway. Cheng Jing said, "My lord has indeed improved. If it had been earlier, the situation would have been much better." As the lord, Huang Song could take the initiative to admit his mistakes. He admitted that he had previously shielded the Yuanshur's generals, causing the civil and military forces to lose balance. The yuansher was Huang Song's family after all. Asking him to admit this was a mistake was tantamount to slapping his own face. Yet, he admitted it, which made Cheng Jing look at him in a higher light. Unfortunately, it was not so easy to extinguish the bad atmosphere brought about by Yuan Xin. Although Nie Sun did not say it, he had a lot of objections. That's true. It's still a little too late, Fengju said. Cheng Yun still has a grudge in his heart. I'm afraid it won't be resolved in a few days. He folded his hands in his sleeves, looking calm and relaxed. There was even a faint smile on his lips, as if he was not worried about this at all. Cheng Jing said, Cheng Yun is a true gentleman. If my lord is honest with him, he will definitely be able to untie the knot in your heart. Fortunately, Nie Sun was a gentleman. Even if he had resentment in his heart, he would not do anything to hurt his lord. If it were Qiguan Rang or Yang Si, what if they tried it? They could stab their lord to death in minutes. The biggest difference between them and other counselors was their thinking. Traditional counselors were particular about loyalty. They were loyal to their lord. They would spontaneously put their lord on a pedestal and put themselves in a lower position. They would often spoil their lord to the point of no return. Non-mainstream counselors were particular about following one's heart. Their lord was just a boss. To them, being a counselor was just a job. They did not have to cling to their job for the sake of a good-for-nothing boss. If they were not satisfied with their job, they could just jump ship and find another one. If their lord was not satisfied, they could just stab another one to death. It was such a simple matter. There was no need to seek death. Therefore, in the previous life, Qiguan Rang killed his old lord, Prince Changsho. In this life, Yang Si jumped ship from Prince Changsho's side and even schemed against him. Huang Song was lucky enough to meet Nie Sun, so he was still safe for now. If the public relations following the crisis were done well, the ruler and his official would be able to return to normal. The two of them walked side by side for a while until Huang Song's residence was far behind them. There was no one around. Cheng Jing asked, Lu Shi is coming in full force. I'm afraid he won't be easy to deal with. Feng Ju tilted his head and smiled faintly, but his eyes were cold. If Lu Shi is easy to deal with, the Tsing-Yi army, the Red Lotus group, the northern borderline, the Meng family of Cangzhou, and Su Bei from Zhe County, they lost too unjustly. This person could successively defeat his enemies and achieve victory. He rose to power by stepping on the corpses of thousands of enemies. How could he be easy to deal with? What made Feng Ju even more frustrated was another matter. He had not heard any news of the Feng family's official counselors taking sides. The Feng family's disciples stayed in Shangyang County peacefully. What did this mean? Either the Feng family felt that the situation in the world was still unclear and that it was not a good time to choose a side. Or the Feng family had already made a decision, so they had not made any moves. If it was the former, Feng Ju was not worried. If it was the latter, it meant that the Feng family thought highly of Zhang Pengji. That was why no one from the Feng family became an official. It was because Zhang Pengji already had Feng Jin, who was of noble birth. If another person from the Feng family came under her banner, it would inevitably give Zhang Pengji, who had a strong personality, the misconception that the Feng family wanted to infiltrate and seize power. It would be detrimental to the interests of the family. The aristocratic families had different ways of dealing with different feudal lords. If it was a lord with a strong personality and was arbitrary, the aristocratic families would take the initiative to avoid her and maintain a safe distance. Chapter 12:21. Fighting for the most advantageous situation in different environments was their way of survival for many years. The Feng family was the same, but they saw it more clearly and were more decisive in making their choices. According to Feng Ju's understanding of the family, this matter was most likely settled. Cheng Jing suddenly asked him, Actually, there's always something I don't understand. Feng Ju tilted his head and looked at him. What is it? Cheng Jing said, Why did Huaijie assist the Lord in the beginning? Was it because of the friendship of youth? Master Qiguan could not understand why Wei Ci wanted to be Zhang Pengji's strategist. Cheng Jing also could not understand why Feng Ju followed Huang Song. Huang Song trusted Feng Ju so much, and Feng Ju treated Huang Song the same way. Everything had a reason. Everything had a reason, didn't it? Feng Ju was speechless in his heart. Friendship of youth? It shouldn't be considered. When Feng Jin brought the pregnant Wei Jingxian to Shangjing as a hostage, Feng Ju, the mischievous child, also followed them. Because he was bored, he wandered around and coincidentally met Huang Song, who was on patrol in Shangjing. He helped Feng Ju out of trouble and they got to know each other. Up until the earthquake in Shangjing, Feng Ju had only known Huang Song for 3 to 4 months. How deep a friendship of youth could there be in 3 to 4 months? Cheng Jing saw through Feng Ju's gaze and asked, "Why is that? Have you ever thought about what you want to do?" Feng Ju asked in return, "Something that won't make you lose interest quickly." Cheng Jing was puzzled. "What do you mean?" Feng Ju seemed to be narcissistic. "Ever since I could remember, I have shown talent that others can't match. I learn everything very quickly. When I completely learned it, I felt how boring it was to repeat it day after day. Even my life became barren. Wasn't it a waste of time to do nothing?" My elder brother disapproved of Ju's actions and often reprimanded and reminded me. Later, when I met the Lord, my second brother harbored a deep prejudice against me. The earthquake in Dongqing and the country was not about to collapse. At that time, I saw a different ambition in the Lord. He saw an ambition that even Huang Song himself had not discovered. It was this little bit of ambition that allowed him, whose life was as barren as a desert, to see the hope of an oasis. Feng Ju had deliberately set things up and pushed Huang Song from behind the scenes to the front of the stage, allowing him to rise higher and higher and be envied by others. He had also caused him to suffer a heavy blow when he was full of himself. He was suspected and even frozen by the Dongqing emperor, allowing the bud called ambition to completely sprout. Feng Jin didn't like Huang Song. He thought that Huang Song was of low birth and that Huang Song had an ulterior motive for getting close to Feng Ju. He thought that Huang Song was restricted by his birth and that he wouldn't be able to become someone great. Since that was the case, Feng Ju decided to do the opposite. What could be more challenging than raising a son of heaven? Even though this was a huge project, Feng Ju still had a lot of fun. In a sense, both Jiang Pengji in her previous life and Huang Song in this life were pitiful to have met such a terrible strategist. Cheng Jing listened in silence for a while and finally understood what Feng Ju wanted to express. He looked at Feng Ju with a complicated gaze. If Qiguan Rang and Yang Si were non-mainstream strategists, then Feng Ju was a naughty child strategist. He was far more self-willed than the former. He secretly felt sorry for his lord. Feng Ju's voice was flat. "Assisting the Lord is what I want to do. I won't lose interest in it soon." He did not have the perseverance and faith of Han Yu and the others who tirelessly pursued Tao. He only followed his heart and nature. "I can do whatever I want, no one else can control me." Yes, he was so willful. Cheng Jing was speechless. Sigh, "I'd better feel sorry for my lord." Huang Song's 2 days of self-reflection were still effective. It was definitely not as simple as what he said. Instead, he seriously put it into practice. However, the disharmony between the civil and military officials was already very serious. It was not something that could be resolved with a few words. It still needed a heavy dose of medicine. Huang Song deeply understood the contradictions among the people and complained incessantly. The tears that flowed from his eyes were all the water that had poured into his brain back then. The crux of the problem of the disharmony between the civil and military officials still lay with Huang Song. As long as he, the Lord, was impartial, the atmosphere below would naturally be purged. For this reason, Huang Song specially created a public relations crisis. He set up a banquet and invited the civil and military officials to attend. At the banquet, Huang Song took advantage of his drunkenness. His eyes were red, and he bitterly reflected on his mistakes. At the same time, he played the sad card, creating a sad atmosphere of being surrounded by strong enemies and hidden dangers within. He did not criticize others. Instead, he blamed himself and took all the blame that did not belong to him. Everyone in the tent blushed when they heard this and began to reflect on themselves. Huang Song was also an award-winning actor. He sang, recited, acted, and performed a set of punches. The effect was better than expected. After that, he repeatedly beat them, and the atmosphere was refreshed. There was not much time left for Huang Song. Jiang Pengji would recuperate for a few more months at most. The earliest would be next spring, and the latest would be next autumn's harvest. Huang Song was like a student who had wasted a winter and summer vacation. He only worked hard overnight to finish his homework when school was about to start. Even if he finished his homework on time, his learning efficiency was not as good as that of a well-behaved student with a solid foundation. As the most powerful vassal in Dongqing, Jiang Pengji's every move would inevitably attract the attention of her neighbors. Needless to say, Huang Song was now hiding in his own territory and quietly growing stronger, waiting for a good opportunity. Another neighbor, separated by Zhanjiang Pass, was also secretly observing her. On one hand, she eliminated the hidden dangers within, and on the other hand, she paid attention to the enemy's movements. Cough, cough, cough. If there's any news in the future, continue to pass it to me. After Niel Yang finished speaking, Wei Dan brought up the medicine that was just the right temperature. He stared at Niel Yang and drank it all. Wei Dan said, "Okay." Niel Yang drank the bitter medicine and coughed for a while. It took him a while to recover. His bloodshot eyes were watery. I knew Lu Shi was a disaster, but I didn't expect him to break through in a desperate situation. He has become a troublesome person now. Wei Dan said. This is not surprising. Zixiao has his eyes on her after all. If she did not have the potential to win, why would Wei Ci choose her? Which vassal in troubled times did not climb up by stepping on the bones of their enemies? Niel Yang's eyes were as cold as the cold moonlight, flashing with rays of light. There were many hidden dangers in the Nie family, and he had already thought of ways to deal with them. He had no ambition and was not keen on power. Originally, Niel Yang only wanted to assist the head of the Nie family to ascend to the throne, but it was different now. If he did not seize it now, could he watch helplessly as the Nie family's foundation was destroyed by a group of people blinded by greed? The Nie family seemed to be at the height of its power, but in fact, it was going downhill. According to his understanding of Jiang Pengji, this woman's ambition would never be satisfied with just Dongqing. The Nie family, or Zhongzhao, was also a piece of meat that she coveted. If Niel Yang wanted to protect the Nie family, he had to fight for it and seize it. As long as he was the final victor, the Nie family would be safe. Cough, cough. Zixuan. My mouth is a little bitter. Help me get some candied plums. Of course, he had to recuperate before that. The situation of the world was like the clouds in the sky, moving when the wind blew and calming when the wind stopped. Jiang Pengji led her troops to stir up the forces in the south of Dongqing. After she was done, she returned home in glory with spoils of war and fruits. It's another year. What should we eat for this year's New Year's banquet? Chapter 12:22. Xueqi sighed and said, "The people here are so enthusiastic." Countless people lined the road to welcome them. Warm handkerchiefs, sachets, and sachets fell like raindrops. Xueqi was stunned and sighed with emotion. He was young, strong, and had a strong recovery ability. His heavy injury was almost healed, and now he was full of vigor again. Although he was a surrendered general, Jiang Pengji didn't give him any special treatment. The other people didn't know which general was which. They would throw sachets and handkerchiefs to whoever was wearing powerful armor, who was good-looking, and who had an extraordinary temperament. Xueqi relied on his beautiful face that was gifted by his parents to swindle a lot of sachets and colorful handkerchiefs. His popularity was not much lower than Li Yun's. Tut! This cruel world that was heartless and only cared about looks. Seeing that this group of young people was so impressive and popular, Yang Si felt sour in his heart. Thinking back to those years, he was also flushed with success and was the ideal husband in the hearts of countless beautiful ladies. Yang Si twirled his neatly trimmed beard and showed some sadness on his face. Wenbin, do you think I'm really old? He touched his face secretly. It felt good. In the words of the audience in the streaming room, it was full of collagen. Han Yu was riding on a horse and silently looked at the people who were welcoming them. Everyone's face was filled with enthusiasm, respect, and joy from the bottom of their hearts. It reminded him of when he was young, when the Emperor of Dongqing went out to worship the heavens, and the government runners forced the people to come out to cheer and kneel to welcome the emperor. When he compared the memory of his youth with the scene in front of him, he could immediately tell which one was real. Before he could recover from his memories, a few yellow sachets were thrown at him in a daze. Looking in the direction of the flying traces, he saw a few pretty girls boldly expressing their love to him. Han Yu blushed. Yang Si happened to disturb him again, and Han Yu got rid of the awkward atmosphere. Han Yu said bluntly, "Do you think you are very young?" If Xueqi was a few years older, he would be old enough to be a grandfather. Men are 31 flowers. Of course I am young. Although Xueqi's age could be rounded up to 4, he looked like he was in his early 30s just by looking at his appearance. Han Yu glanced at Li Yun, Xie, and the other little fresh meats, who had received so many flowers that their hands were sore. He then looked at the old bacon, Xueqi, and smiled without saying a word. Xueqi, asterisk. It was one thing for Han Yu to crush the two armies, but now that they were on the same side, why was Han Yu still against him? Xueqi had an ominous premonition. Could it be that he wouldn't be able to turn things around in the future? The cheers of the people were like a tsunami. Han Yu looked at her back and tightened his grip on the reins. In a trance, he seemed to see the other party wearing a dragon robe, walking up the stairs step by step. Perhaps she was the final destination. Han Yu smiled faintly. He seemed to be influenced by the enthusiasm of the people around him, and his mood became more and more joyful. Feng Zhen, Feng Jin, and the others had been waiting for a long time. Each of them craned their necks, waiting for the army to appear. He's here. My lord and the others are back. Seeing the commotion in the crowd from afar, the long-awaited army slowly appeared in sight. The second floor of the streets on both sides of the street was filled with onlookers. Most of them had only heard of Jiang Pengji's name, but they had never seen her in person. No matter how famous she was in the outside world, if they didn't see her with their own eyes, it would be unrealistic. Is the woman leading the army the Duke of Lanting? A certain scholar tried hard to control his manners. He couldn't be like those ordinary people who leaned against the window and stretched half of his body out, but he couldn't help but stretch his neck. After taking a look, he said, "She's indeed not an ordinary woman." Jiang Pengji was wearing the improved clothes for women. She looked crisp and elegant, and she would definitely become a fashion vane in Wanzhou. If she's an ordinary woman, what would Su Bei from Zhe County be? Another scholar said with a smile, "I thought the Duke of Lanting would be a strong and sturdy woman with dark skin like a boar. Looking at her now, it seems that although her appearance isn't stunning, it's not bad either." Many people had heard of Jiang Pengji's deeds. An image of a strong and sturdy man appeared in their minds. Who would have thought that she would be considered a beauty? I heard that the Duke of Lanting hasn't gotten married yet. I wonder what kind of man would be able to catch her eye. It can't be you or me. That's strange. Why hasn't the Duke of Lanting gotten married yet? Her knees are so shabby that it makes people anxious. Yes, anxious. Wei Si's policy of public opinion was still useful. The school of novels had also flourished in the past few years. There were storytellers on the streets and alleys, in restaurants and tea houses. Every day, people would bring small stools to listen to the stories. In the past few years, the territory under her rule was filled with brainless fans who sang praises of Jiang Pengji. Even though many scholars were quite critical of her identity as a woman, after staying in Wanzhou for a long time, they were unknowingly brainwashed. Before coming to Wanzhou, this was what they thought. She was just a woman. She could be glorious for a lifetime, but she would eventually marry, have children, and retire. After coming to Wanzhou, this was what they thought. How could my Duke of Lanting be so handsome, so beautiful, so wise, so powerful, so unparalleled in the world? They were frantically cheering for the Duke of Lanting. A new scholar who had just arrived opened his mouth. Maybe she has some unspeakable illness? Besides, which man would want such a rebellious woman? As soon as he finished speaking, he attracted a dozen unfriendly gazes from the tea house. Someone retorted and mocked. What a joke! A great hero like the Duke of Lanting should have carefully selected the best in the world. There are countless men and women in Wanzhou who are waiting for her favor. You are all frogs in a well. What you said just now is really hilarious. The new scholar's face turned green and white. He couldn't stay any longer, so he simply flicked his sleeves and left. When he went downstairs, he saw a few figures in blue and white holding onto the handrails as they went up to a private room on the second floor. Wow, so impressive. Sun Lan was wearing the blue and white school uniform of the Golden Scale Academy. She had 2 blue bags slung across her shoulders. There were a few books in the bags. According to normal times, they should still be in class at the Golden Scale Academy. However, the children wanted to see the world, so they begged their parents to apply for an hour's leave from the academy and came to watch the fun. Sun Lan and Qiguan Jinghui used both hands to lean against the window. They widened their eyes and carefully searched for their target. Jinghui, that's Uncle Qiguan. Sun Lan's eyes were bright, and he immediately found his target. Qiguan Jinghui looked in the direction he was pointing, and her eyes suddenly lit up. "Daddy, Daddy," she called out in the direction of the crowd, but the cheers around her were too loud and completely drowned out her voice. Seeing this, Qiguan Jinghui pouted. Sun Lan raised a hand and patted her shoulder. "You'll see Uncle later. Jinghui, don't be disappointed or sad." Chapter 12:23. Ha! The child beside Jinghui is a student of the Golden Scale Academy, right? Which school is he from? Qiguan Rang waved his fan, his brows furrowed in displeasure. Wanzhou was liberal, but that didn't mean that other people's boys could touch their daughters. Most scholars in ancient times were short-sighted. It wasn't high, but it wasn't as good as a general's. Qiguan Rang could recognize Qiguan Jinghui, but he couldn't tell who the boy beside her was. Li Yun glanced at him and said, "Master Sun's grandson is called Sun Lan." He still remembered that Sun Lan was an introverted and shy boy, but now he was much more outgoing. Sun Zidao's grandson? So it's him. When Jiang Pengji sent troops to Mengzhan, Qiguan Rang was in charge of Chongzhou and assisted Sun when in governing Beizhou, Beijiang. He often heard Sun Wen talk about his grandson, so he had an impression of him. Li Yun smiled and said, "The children have a good relationship." The parents' generation had a good relationship, so they naturally hoped that the next generation would get along well. If nothing unexpected happened, these children would be the cornerstone of the future. If they had a good relationship, it wouldn't be easy to have disagreements. Qiguan Rang snorted coldly and didn't comment. Li Yun saw that he was unhappy, but he couldn't think of anything that had angered Qiguan Rang, so he could only keep his mouth shut. "Jinghui, your father is looking over here." Sun Lan saw Qiguan Rang looking over and waved his hands excitedly. Chongqing glanced around and saw Li Yun. She turned to the chubby girl in Shangguan Wan's arms and said, "Nuanyuan, your father is over there." The chubby girl was Li Yun's eldest daughter. She was named Lin Wan, and her nickname was Nuanyuan. She lived up to her name. She was always smiling and would laugh at whoever teased her. Her smile was warm and clean, and she rarely cried. Chongqing and the others liked her very much when they first saw her. Nuanyuan was at the age where she liked to babble. The first word she learned was, "father." Hearing the familiar pronunciation, she immediately turned to look at Chongqing. She smiled, revealing her red gums and 2 or 3 white teeth. "Father." "Father," Shangguan Wan tapped the tip of Nuanyuan's nose with her finger and said, "Daddy will be able to see it when he comes back. The window isn't high, so it's not safe to approach it." Chongqing's children were not tall, so they would be fine if they leaned against the window. However, it would be different if she carried Nuanyuan close to the window. Nuanyuan did not know what Shangguan Wan was talking about. Instead, she opened her mouth and sucked on Shangguan Wan's fingertip. The atmosphere in the private room was harmonious and relaxed, but the atmosphere outside was still high. "Master." Jiang Pengji got off the horse and threw the reins to the soldiers. Feng Jin and Feng Zhan, who had been waiting for a long time, went forward to welcome her. Cheng Yuan was also there, but his cheeks were thinner than before, and his chin was sharper. "Thank you for your hard work." Jiang Pengji raised her hands and helped them up. "It's not hard at all. It's part of my duty to share my lord's burden." It was not a place for them to chat and reminisce about the past. Jiang Pengji returned to the manor and sent people to disperse the people who had gathered together in an orderly manner. Because they were tired from the long journey, Jiang Pengji considerately asked everyone to go back to the manor and rest for a while. The rest of the matters could be discussed the next day. Han Yu and Xie Zhe were both newly surrendered. It was reasonable to say that they had no property in Wanzhou. However, Jiang Pengji had already sent people to bring their families to Wanzhou in advance. The manor and residences had already been prepared. Xie Zhe returned to the manor under the guidance of a servant. From afar, he saw his wife waiting at the gate with her servants. He was very excited. He had been mentally prepared to die on the battlefield and be separated by life and death. He had never thought that there would be a day when they would be reunited again. When a husband and wife met, they naturally had a lot to talk about. Compared to the harmonious and sweet relationship between the husband and wife, the other couple was a little cold. Han Yu and his wife were considered a young couple. They knew each other very well. He could tell at a glance whether his wife treated him sincerely or perfunctorily. Her husband had just escaped from death. Even if she didn't welcome him warmly, she should at least ask about his well-being. However, his wife didn't even bother to put on a show. Thinking about what Xueqi had said earlier, Han Yu felt very upset. "Does my wife resent your husband?" Han Yu asked softly. Mrs. Han had a dignified demeanor. There was not a single flaw on her body. She was as perfect as an exquisite porcelain doll. "I am more than happy that you have come back safely. Why would I resent you?" Mrs. Han smiled and turned around to order the servant girls. She asked the servants to prepare hot water and clean clothes for Han Yu. At the same time, she asked the concubines from the backyard to come out and serve Han Yu. Han Yu didn't take any concubines after his marriage. However, he had 2 servant girls who served him before his marriage. Mrs. Han generously accepted them and even raised their status. Not only did she treat the concubines well, but she also took good care of the sons of the concubines. They were so perfect that there was no fault to be found. Seeing this, Han Yu could only sigh. "My wife, why don't we have a talk?" Han Yu said. Mrs. Han seemed to be surprised. She asked him in reply, "Talk about what?" Han Yu choked and didn't know how to continue the conversation. He could see that his wife was dissatisfied and even resentful. However, she denied it, so he couldn't force her. "Nothing. Master Yuanjing is here now. As his disciple, I should pay him a visit." Mrs. Han smiled. "If that's the case, I will help you prepare. It's rude to come empty-handed." Han Yu could only stare at her. When Mrs. Han was about to walk out of the door, he said, "Although the Duke of Lanting is a woman, she is also an outstanding person. She is no worse than the Duke of Xinjiao." In Han Yu's eyes, Jiang Pengji was certainly no worse than Su Pei, but she still had to say what she had to say. "Lang Jun is the head of the family. I am just a woman from the backyard. Why are you telling me this?" Mrs. Han maintained a perfect smile on her face, but she was unhappy in her heart. First, she was sent to Wanzhou as a captive. Although he didn't neglect or offend her, it still bothered her and made her feel bad. She thought that Han Yu would rather die than surrender. He might not imitate Chung Sun, but he wouldn't surrender to Lu Shi easily. She didn't expect that Han Yu would surrender to a new master so easily. Moreover, the new master was not close to the gentry but friendly to the poor. Han Yu's surrender to Lu Shi became a joke among the gentry in Zhe County, which made her feel even more ashamed. That feeling turned into resentment, but she buried it deep in her heart and didn't want to talk about it with others. Han Yu really didn't have a good eye. That day, every household was not peaceful. Li Yun went home, hugged his daughter and kissed his wife. He was so happy that he looked like a fool. Before the banquet started, the gatekeeper outside the house announced that a guest had arrived. "Who is it?" The gatekeeper said. "The guest claims to be from the Xie family." Li Yun suddenly remembered who it was and heard a clang. His father, Xie Qian, was so shocked that he dropped his chopsticks on the table. "The Xie family?" Xie Qian was surprised. Chapter 12:24. Xie Zhe solemnly asked his wife to prepare a generous gift and brought his family to visit. However, he came at a bad time. Li Yun's family had just finished their meal. It wasn't that Xie Zhe didn't understand etiquette, but Li Yun's family accommodated Shangguan Wan and their precious Lin Wan, who worked in the government office, during mealtime. Xie Zhe told his wife about eldest uncle Xie Qian. His wife was also shocked. Although Xie Qian was from the previous generation, his position in the Xie family was special. After his accident, his courtyard in the Xie manor was sealed and no one had the right to live in it. It was a courtyard with excellent feng shui. When Xie Zhe's wife married, she asked about it out of curiosity and found out about Xie Qian. "Lang Jun, is that really eldest uncle?" Madame Xie Zhe sat by his side and waited. Her gentle black eyes carried a tinge of surprise. "I heard from the old servant that first uncle had already." "This is Commandant Li Yun's mansion. How could first uncle be here?" Although Xie Zhe brought her to see Xie Qian and his respect warmed her heart, she was afraid that her husband would be deceived. Xueqi had just surrendered and needed to bide his time. Ever since Xueqi's wife arrived in Wanzhou, she had been living in the backyard and didn't dare to move around casually. She was afraid that she would accidentally anger the original nobles in Wanzhou. In the end, not only did she not help her husband, she even dragged him down. Xueqi raised his hand and patted the back of her hand to comfort her. I have confirmed that Hanmei's biological father is eldest uncle, Xueqi said. Although eldest uncle has been removed from the Xie family, his bloodline can't be severed. As juniors, we naturally have to take the initiative to visit. We can't forget basic etiquette in front of uncle. Xueqi comforted his wife, but his heart was beating like a drum. He was so nervous that his palms were sweating. His hearing was excellent and he acutely heard light footsteps approaching from afar. Martial artists all had the ability to lift their qi and lighten their bodies. Therefore, the higher their level of cultivation, the lighter their footsteps and the more stable their lower body. If it were an ordinary person, their footsteps would be heavy, loud, and deep. Xueqi had a vague guess and stared unblinkingly in the direction of the sound. Not long after, a scholarly man dressed in a dark green robe entered his line of sight. This person's appearance was somewhat similar to Li Yun's. However, Li Yun had been on expeditions all year round, so there was always a bloodthirsty and sharp aura around him, along with a hot-bloodedness that could not be ignored. This middle-aged man, however, was different. His elegant bearing gave people a favorable impression. His brows were gentle, and his facial features were even more refined and elegant. If it wasn't for his lower body being stable and breathing, Xueqi would have thought, "Eldest uncle? It's really eldest uncle." Xueqi was dumbfounded. It took him a while to recover and solemnly bowed. Seeing this, Xueqi's wife also bowed in respect. Xie Qian frowned at the young couple and got up to help them up. "There are no outsiders here, there's no need to do this." Xueqi smile. "Xie. Uncle," Xueqi smiled. "This is the first time I've brought a relative to see you. I can't miss out on this gift." Even if they were a family, they couldn't be rude. Xie Qian said, "I heard from Hanmei that you're second brother's fifth son? I haven't seen you for a few years and you've grown up." Xueqi said, "Eldest uncle, you can call me Yuan Gue." "Yuan Gue?" Xie Qian's expression froze. "Your father gave you this name?" "Zhe." It had rules and a role model. It was a good name, but when read, it was such a coincidence. "Yes, father gave it." He even said that it took him a long time to choose. If eldest uncle was still here, with his literary talent, he wouldn't have to go through so much trouble. Xueqi didn't realize what was wrong until he realized it. He asked Xie Qian anxiously, "Eldest uncle, is there something wrong with this name? Or did I accidentally offend someone's taboo?" Xie Qian smiled. "There's nothing wrong with it. It's just that the pronunciation is misleading." Xueqi didn't understand. Xie Qian didn't tease Xueqi. As soon as he saw Xueqi, he knew that he was a straightforward person like many of the Xies. Honest people were also innocent. It was better not to bully them. There's an object in the carpentry workshop called a compass. It's the word for circle and the word for regulation. It's used to make things and seems to be an indispensable tool in the carpentry workshop. I only heard about it recently and may have misunderstood it. I hope you won't hold it against me. With that, Xueqi understood. So his name and tool had been pronounced with the same pronunciation. He was a broad-minded person. There were many people in the world with the same name or character. It wasn't a big deal. Little did he know that Xueqi's character had made him the most famous general of this era. Students couldn't memorize famous people in history, but when compass was mentioned, they couldn't help but think of Xueqi. Xueqi said, "If I can make uncle happy, it doesn't matter if I misunderstood." Xie Qian smiled gently at him. As expected of a direct descendant of the Xies, he always liked to play straight and didn't know how to beat around the bush. Although he had given up on returning to the clan, he couldn't remain indifferent when he met the Xies descendants many years later. He asked about his relatives with concern, and Xueqi answered them one by one. Before Xie Qian could sigh, a meatball suddenly rolled in from outside. "Grandpa. Nuanyuan." Xie Qian, who had a granddaughter complex, was so scared that his voice changed. The servant who was serving Nuanyuan followed behind. Seeing her face down on the ground, she was scared out of her wits. Probably because she had more fat on her body, the fall didn't hurt. Nuanyuan propped herself up with her arms and shook her little head, as if trying to wake herself up. She refused the maid's help and slowly climbed up. Her body swayed like a plump penguin as she moved towards Xueqi. Xueqi was already in front of her. She stretched out her arms to hold his legs. After she steadied herself, she stretched out her right hand and opened her little claws. In her palm lay a very, very small pig-head snack that she had squeezed until it was deformed. "Grandpa, eat." Nuanyuan wasn't fluent in speech. She only knew a few words. Although she was young, she had inherited her father's straightforward and generous personality. She loved to share with others. If she thought something was delicious, she liked to leave a portion to share with her mother or grandfather. As for Li Yun, after being away for so long, Nuanyuan, who was only a little over a year old at the time, had no impression of him. Her ability to call him daddy was taught well by her relatives and servants. Li Nuanyuan was good-looking. She looked a little like Li Yun and Shangguan Wan, but more like her grandmother, Wang Huiyun. Chapter 12:25. All right, Grandpa, eat. Xueqi didn't mind that the pastry pig had been squeezed out of shape and sucked the sweat from his palms. Instead, he ate it with a kind expression. Xueqi asked curiously, "Is this cousin's daughter?" The Xie family had always had more males than females, with more males than females. Xueqi's generation only had 2 sisters, the rest were just servants. In the Xie family, male children were abundant, while female children were rare. Yes, her name is Lin Wan. Her nickname is Nuanyuan. Xueqi picked up the plump Nuanyuan. She was staring at Xueqi with her black grape-like eyes, as if she was wondering when a strange uncle had come to her house. Nuanyuan, call him uncle. Nuanyuan was a beat slower and mumbled the words, then giggled and buried her head in Xueqi's neck, as if she was shy. The cute little angel's call was like a sharp sword piercing through Xueqi's chest, making his limbs go numb. He was touched by her cuteness. Cousin was indeed cousin. Even his daughter was so outstanding. She was indeed a descendant of the Xie family. Oh right. Xueqi didn't seem to have given up on the idea of having Li Yun acknowledge his ancestors. He couldn't move Li Yun, so he tried Xueqi. After all, he was a descendant of the Xie family. How could he change his family name? If he changed his family name, it would be difficult for the Xie family to protect Li Yun in the future. Xueqi had a change of heart. On the surface, he rejected Xueqi's good intentions. It was better to let Li Yun continue to be a Li. Xueqi couldn't even deal with Li Yun, let alone Xueqi's thoughts. It was already good enough that he hadn't been led into a ditch. Lin Wan, is this your name? Xueqi was surprised. Men often named themselves with a single character, using a double character as a base. Women used a double character, avoiding a single character. Of course, this was only for those who were particular about it. If the common people had a decent name, it would be great. Why would they be afraid of single and double characters? For example, Li Yun's childhood nickname was Li Gozhu. Not just Gozhu, but many people also named him Tai Dan, Sha Dan, Xuanzi, and the like. It was good enough to have a name that people could call. Why would they be particular about it? Xueqi said, "The trend in Wanzhou has been like this in recent years. I'm afraid that Nuanyuan will also walk the path of a military general in the future. Taking a double name sounds too soft." Even though Xueqi could not imagine the scene of Nuanyuan, who looked like his wife, Wang Huiyun, wielding a knife and a gun, it was a family tradition, so he had to learn it. In the entire Xie clan, there was no need to talk about the male clansmen, as they had been beaten since they were young. The female clansmen also had to learn some martial arts. Nuanyuan's surname was Li, but she still had the blood of the Xie family flowing in her veins. Naturally, she could not abandon the family inheritance. Xueqi thought of his lord's name, Lu Shi, and immediately understood who had started the trend of women taking single characters. Xueqi's wife was shocked. She couldn't imagine what her uncle was thinking. He actually wanted Lin Wan to grow up and become a general to kill enemies. "Uncle, swords have no eyes on the battlefield, Nuanyuan," Xueqi said. "Wanzhou has a complete system for female soldiers. If Nuanyuan wants to go to war, she'll probably start from the bottom. She won't face danger head-on. She had to train her courage first before killing the enemy to earn military merits. Although Xueqi spoiled his granddaughter, he did not spoil her inappropriately. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that Xueqi had trained Lin Wan as the legitimate heir. None of the heirs of the Xie clan are useless. Although Nuanyuan is young, she is full of intelligence. It would be a pity if we don't teach her well. Nuanyuan didn't know what the adults were talking about. She only knew that they were all good-looking. She was well-behaved and entertained herself. Sometimes she pulled Xueqi's sleeve, and sometimes she entertained herself. She giggled without crying or making a fuss. Which couple wouldn't like such a beautiful little angel? They liked her so much that they couldn't wait to give birth to a daughter who was as well-behaved and obedient as Nuanyuan. Compared to the harmony in the Li residence, Han Yu's situation was a bit awkward. He had wanted to take his wife to see Master Yuan Jing. Han Yu had always respected Master Yuan Jing as a father. Now that he was taking his wife to see Master Yuan Jing, the meaning was obvious. He tried his best to ease the relationship between husband and wife, but Mrs. Han was stubborn and arrogant, so it didn't work. Mrs. Han politely declined Han Yu's proposal. Instead, she urged Han Yu to leave the house as soon as possible with the excuse that it was getting late. Paying a visit to someone's home was also very particular. The most basic etiquette was not to suddenly visit the host while the host was eating. Han Yu looked at the sky and decided to visit Master Yuanjing's house alone with a generous gift. Most of Jiang Pengji's people were gathered in one place. Although Master Yuanjing wasn't one of them, he was still assigned a house in a good location. Han Yu's house was only 2 streets away from Master Yuanjing's house, so it wouldn't take much time to get there. Han Yu's face darkened. Even if Mrs. Han didn't say it out loud, she was very thorough in her work. But Han Yu was her husband who shared the same bed with her. How could he not understand? Han Yu could see that Mrs. Han's attitude towards Master Yuanjing was distant and arrogant. That made Han Yu very angry. Master Yuanjing became famous because he defeated the northern borderline and took back the 3 cities. He became a famous man in the 5 kingdoms. Once he became famous, people would dig into Master Yuanjing's past. His ancestors had been prominent nobles during the 16 Kingdoms period, but after 2 generations, they were punished for their words and fell into dire straits. In Master Yuanjing's generation, the whole family was so poor that they only had a genealogy book. To be honest, Master Yuanjing's starting point was even lower than the common scholars from poor families. The scholars from poor families included the common nobles, the local gentry, and the nouveau riche. They didn't have power or influence, but they had money. Even if he was famous and had students all over the world, he was not a great person in the eyes of the old and stubborn gentry. Han Yu saw his wife's carelessness and neglect, which made him even angrier. "Brother Wenbin, you are finally here." Tang Yao, who had been wandering outside for a long time, hurried to greet Han Yu. "Master knew that I would come?" Tang Yao said. "Master said that Brother Wenbin pays attention to etiquette and will definitely come today." People in the world paid attention to respecting their masters. There was a saying, "A master for a day is a father for a lifetime." Visiting Master Yuanjing was no different from visiting his father. Han Yu said, "Master is still like this." Han Yu's eyes turned red when he saw his master who he hadn't seen for many years, but he couldn't tell why he felt wronged. Master Yuanjing was comforted to see that his disciple had become so mature and steady. Master Yuanjing was not only his academic teacher, but also his life mentor. Han Yu could find his own path because of Master Yuanjing's guidance. He never hid anything from Master Yuanjing. They were like father and son who talked about everything. "There is one thing that I don't understand. Master once said that your path is to have students all over the world. Why are you trapped in Wanzhou now? Isn't this old man practicing his own Tao?" Master Yuanjing smiled and pointed at the stacks of books on the table. There were more than 20 books in each stack, and there were 5 stacks in total. These were the homework of the students of the Golden Scale Academy. The improved teaching system of the Golden Scale Academy was very effective. Compared to Master Yuanjing's previous teaching efficiency, it was like taking a rocket to the sky. There were so many students, but according to the previous standard, there were not many who were qualified to study. There was only one child prodigy like Feng Yi. Chapter 12:26. Han Yu asked for Master Yuanjing's permission. He took a few books and read them carefully. The more he read, the more shocked he became. This, Master Yuanjing sighed. I admire the sage's education without discrimination, and teaching students in accordance with their aptitudes. I've been vigilant for many years and I dare not slack off. But I'm weak and my energy is limited. Even if I'm ambitious, I'm still not as good as the sage. Master Yuanjing advocated education for all. What did education without discrimination mean? In layman's terms, anyone could receive education. No matter if they were smart, stupid, virtuous or unworthy, they could all eliminate their differences through education. The ambition and ideal were beautiful, but the result was heart-wrenching. Master Yuanjing was only one person. He only had one mouth and two hands. His lifespan was limited to that of an ordinary person. Even if he was obsessed with education, the number of students he could teach was limited, let alone enlighten the people. Because of the limited resources, Master Yuanjing's education without discrimination was also an elite education. He unconsciously tilted the educational resources to the smart students. Master Yuanjing realized this, but he was powerless to change the situation. This problem had been bothering him for a long time. It wasn't until he came to Wanzhou that he suddenly understood the crux of the problem. Instead of worrying about scarcity, he worried about inequality. Because of the shortage of educational resources, the limited resources would be tilted to the talented students to ensure the maximum benefits. Master Yuanjing made a bold assumption. What if the educational resources could be expanded until there was a surplus? Then every student would have enough educational resources. With this premise, the education without discrimination could be implemented, and the realm of teaching students in accordance with their aptitudes could be further achieved. Han Yu put down the students' homework in shock and secretly calmed himself down. Even if he didn't know much about the academy, he knew that almost all the students in the academy were commoners. They had no learning foundation or conditions. As for talent, one or two of them might be geniuses, but not everyone was a genius. Students like these, their homework was quite good. How many students are there in the Golden Scale Academy? Han Yu asked. Master Yuanjing answered, we are currently recruiting 2 batches of students. The 3rd batch is still being selected. There are a total of 356 students. Han Yu asked again, how are their grades and knowledge? Master Yuanjing smiled. Although they are not as good as Fengyi and others, they are not inferior to the children of the same age in the aristocratic families. What about talent? Most of them are mediocre. Their only virtue is being diligent and eager to learn. Han Yu could not help but gasp when he heard that. How long had the Golden Scale Academy been established? He had already accepted 2 batches of students, a total of 356 people. Their learning speed and depth were not the slightest bit inferior to their peers who were studying in the landowning household school. This was very frightening. These students had started learning so late, their foundations were so weak, and their talents were at the level of an ordinary person. Even if they were to hang themselves from a beam, it would still be very difficult for them to catch up with the learning speed of the aristocratic families. One had to know that most of the children of landowning households started studying at the age of 3. The students of the Golden Scale Academy were 4 to 5 years behind them. They were 4 to 5 years behind, but they could barely catch up. Wasn't that terrifying? If it wasn't a problem of talent, then it was a problem of learning methods and the education system. Han Yu spotted the core with his sharp eyes. What was the purpose of this Golden Scale Academy? He could not help but ask the question in his heart. Master Yuanjing smiled but did not speak. He stood up and took out an unusually heavy booklet. The booklet was as thick as a knuckle, and the xian paper was filled with words. They were all Master Yuanjing's handwriting. Some of the words were neat, some were more random, and some were scribbled. They must have been written in a hurry. Han Yu flipped through the booklet carefully. He found that the booklet could be called the History of the Growth of the Golden Scale Academy. Every step of the reform was recorded in detail. The students were divided into classes according to their age and learning progress. The learning content was also systematically classified into subjects. The students' daily time was planned in detail. Different classes would learn different subjects at the same time, making perfect use of the master's teaching time. The content of the students' learning was also from shallow to deep. What was even more amazing was the new rhymes of Chinese, which greatly lowered the threshold of learning. Although the educational task was heavy, it was indeed clearer than the landowning household school. The learning efficiency of the two could not be compared. Any landowning household with a profound background had a special family school for the children of the family to study. However, it was only open to the same clan. As long as one was a member of the family, he or she could enjoy the educational resources. The family school sounded like a high-end thing, but in fact, it was not much different from a private school. A group of students of the same clan stayed together, regardless of age or learning progress. The master taught them in a unified way, and occasionally gave them one-on-one guidance. As a result, the students who learned fast were slowed down, and the students who had a weak foundation could not keep up with the learning progress. Naturally, their learning efficiency was not high. The landowning households who had the resources could not go to the family school. They could directly invite the great scholars or famous scholars to come to their homes for one-on-one teaching. By doing so, the learning efficiency, quality, and progress were all guaranteed, but the educational resources were wasted. A master could have taught more students, but the resources were all enjoyed by one student, who could not take care of others. Was that not a waste? That was the ineffective overflow of educational resources. The booklet written by Master Yuanjing was called an essay, but it was more like a brand new, well-organized system. The teaching resources and the students were balanced as much as possible to ensure the learning efficiency, quality, and progress of the students while benefiting more students. Han Yu flipped through the booklet. Following the content, he witnessed the system of the Golden Scale Academy from scratch, and it was gradually perfected and reasonable. Master Yuanjing did not rely on his imagination or his idealized imagination to perfect this system. Instead, he focused on the actual situation. Seeing Master Yuanjing's steady layout and planning, Han Yu felt even more ashamed of his frivolous and naive pursuit of Tao. If Jiang Pengji hadn't woken him up, he would have been stuck in a dead end. Master, you are indeed a genius in the world. I am ashamed of my inferiority. Master Yuanjing said seriously, the Golden Scale Academy from scratch is the result of the painstaking efforts of me and a few other great scholars. It is not something that can be accomplished by one person. Without the support of the Lord of Lanting and the efforts of those children, this system would not be as fruitful as it is today. Master Yuanjing's contribution was great, but it was not the greatest, and it was not his contribution alone. Han Yu knew that he had made a slip of the tongue, so he immediately apologized solemnly. Master, do you think highly of the Lord? Han Yu noticed that Master Yuanjing addressed Jiang Pengji respectfully. Chapter 12:27. The two of them talked for a while more. Master Yuanjing looked tired and Han Yu took the initiative to leave. Rest early, Master. I will visit again tomorrow, Master Yuanjing said. The war has just ended. You must be busy. Don't worry about an old man like me. You can go about your business. He asked Tang Yao to see Han Yu off. He washed up and got ready to rest. However, it was destined to be a restless night. The guard at the corner door told him that there was a guest outside. What kind of mysterious guest is this? Master Yuanjing frowned. He didn't go directly to the front door. Instead, he went to the corner door sneakily. The guard took out an object and handed it to Master Yuanjing. Master Yuanjing's pupils shrank after he saw it. Master Yuanjing turned his wrist and held the object tightly in his palm. His knuckles turned blue because of the force. Ask that person to wait for me in the study. Let him in quietly. Don't disturb the others. Master Yuanjing's expression was a little strange. After the gatekeeper left, he released his clenched fist and revealed a jade guanyin. The jade was cold. There was a tinge of blue in the green. The green was pure and strong. In the eyes of the common people, this kind of jade was not expensive. No matter how good the quality was, it couldn't be compared to other famous jade. The aristocrats would never play with this kind of cheap stuff. But Master Yuanjing knew that this kind of jade was called jade. It was said that it was the most expensive and rare imperial jade. He had learned about jadeite thanks to a young friend he had made despite the age gap. Gu Min, he murmured. Jade was very rare. It was produced in the southwest border. The local people didn't pay much attention to it. They wouldn't waste manpower to transport it to the 5 countries in the Central Plains. Only one person was interested. He happily played with the jadeite and secretly collected a lot of treasures. You don't understand. This thing will be rare in the future. If I collect it now, the future generations will definitely thank me. Only Gu Min would use jade to carve a jade Buddha. Who was the guest outside? When the guest was secretly brought in, Master Yuanjing's eyes suddenly became sharp. He stared at the person. Judging by the figure, the person was a teenager. His footsteps were heavy and messy. He probably didn't know any martial arts. The person closed the door of the study and turned to Master Yuanjing. He took off his wide hood as he walked. A delicate face was revealed after the hood was taken off. The noble aura he exuded made him look like a pampered and spoiled son of an aristocratic family. My name is Lu Zhao. Master Yuanjing. Lu Zhao? Master Yuanjing's expression didn't change, but he understood. The person who came with the Jade Buddha was most likely a descendant of Gu Min. Although Lu Zhao was the son of a concubine, his real identity was the legitimate son of Gu Min and Lu Shi. Master Yuanjing faked a smile and said, "Why are you visiting me so late at night?" For a moment, countless thoughts flashed through his mind, and he looked at Lu Zhao with a measuring and scrutinizing gaze. As smart as he was, he could not think of the reason why Lu Zhao would look for him in the middle of the night. He was even more unwilling to think of a conspiracy theory. "It is," Master Lu said. Master. Yuanjing. Master. Lu Zhao's expression was serious and his eyes were bright. There wasn't the slightest bit of frivolity in them. He said, "This matter is of great importance. I hope that you won't deny it." Master Yuanjing said, "Tell me. For the sake of your mother, I will do my best to help you." He didn't say anything. If Lu Zhao wanted to seize power, he wouldn't help him. If it was something else. Of course, anything that Gu Min's family got involved with was not a small matter. Lu Zhao said, "Master, do you know that Lu Shi is not the real Lu Shi?" Master Yuanjing said calmly, "I know. But so what? Do you want me to get rid of her?" She was quite capable. Monk Liaochen could see it. Of course, he could see that Jiang Pengji was extraordinary. Although reincarnating in another person's body was quite scary, it was nothing to a fraud of his level. Wei Xi's attitude and reaction were the key to his trust in Jiang Pengji. He still remembered the first time he met Gu Min and the world she described. But only Lu Shi could create such a magnificent and beautiful world. No, it should be said that he had replaced Lu Shi as an otherworldly person. If Lu Zhao wanted to go against Lu Shi, Master Yuanjing wouldn't help him, even if he was the son of an old friend. Lu Zhao shook his head and said in a low voice, "I've never had such a thought. She's my sister, and I really treat her as my sister. According to my dead mother, she's related to the fate of the world. She can't be touched. But I know who wants to touch her." Master Yuanjing was surprised. "Then why did you come today?" "It's very important to me to touch my sister's people," Lu Zhao said. "I suspect that my father Lu Shi has been possessed by a villain. He's plotting something big. My real sister, Lu Shi, is missing. I'm here today to ask if there's a plan that satisfies both sides." Lu Zhao was greedy. He wanted to protect everyone. Master Yuanjing's face darkened. He looked at Lu Zhao with a complicated gaze. Lu Zhao looked like Gu Min. His personality was similar. The world is the game, and the people are the pawns. You and I are pawns, but the person playing the game is the general. "It's better if you don't get involved," Master Yuanjing said solemnly. Mr. Yuanjing said solemnly, "You saw what happened to the last person who tried to turn things around." Lu Zhao's body trembled. His eyes widened. Master Yuanjing heaved a long sigh. He could not help but reminisce. The world was the game and the people were the pawns. How God cared for the people. It allowed an otherworldly person to support the dark world and lead everything in the best direction. How cruel and heartless it was. It generously helped the people, but it was stingy and ignored a mother's smallest wish. "Chanen, I beg you to think of a way. Can't you have the best of both worlds?" The beautiful woman held the baby girl in her arms and cried to him. Her bloodshot eyes were swollen and full of despair. "I can't have my cake and eat it too. There's nothing I can do. As soon as Master Yuanjing said that, the woman cried uncontrollably. Knowing that there was a complete soul in her daughter's body, the woman's first reaction was not to be ecstatic. Instead, she was anxious and on the verge of losing control of her emotions. She knew that her daughter had dementia and no soul. In the future, this body would welcome a powerful soul and obtain a new life in the truest sense. What was the result? Her daughter was born with a complete soul. This meant that this daughter was a new life, and she was Gu Min's daughter. How could she accept that after she raised her daughter for 12 years, her body was occupied by another destined soul? That was her daughter. If she did not do that, the Zhang dynasty that should have been established would no longer exist, and the chaotic world that should have ended early would have continued. If the chaotic world continued, there would be countless lonely souls and wild ghosts. Even if the world was divided and united, the dynasty that was established was not the Zhang dynasty. Even if history would slowly develop, how long would it take to truly enter the developed modern era? 500 years or 1,000 years? The Zhang dynasty only used 300 years. When the Zhang dynasty stood at the top of the world, other places were still backward and barren. There were endless wars, and the people were ignorant and ridiculous. If the butterfly had the Zhang dynasty, there would be many more innocent souls. Chapter 12:28. Gu Min could not handle it, and neither could Lu Zhao. The former had already paid the price with his life. If the latter still wanted to challenge, he would probably end up the same way. Master Yuanjing's words made Lu Zhao look disappointed. His delicate brows were tainted with a tinge of darkness, as if his spirit had been sucked away. Looking at the face that resembled his old friend, Master Yuanjing's heart softened a little. You can try to trust Lu Shi. According to my observation, he is not someone who would kill indiscriminately without principles. He has a strong heart. Lu Zhao said blankly. There are similar words in my dead mother's handwriting. Of course I trust her, but she and my father Lu Shi are not the same kind of people. They both have their own plans. They obviously want to kill each other, but when they meet, they are kind and filial. I can't see any flaws. I am also puzzled. What other plans do they have in their heads? The premise of trust is honesty. His dead mother, Gu Min, and Master Yuanjing both said that Zhang Pengji was trustworthy, but she said nothing. Lu Zhao did not feel safe. He trusted Zhang Pengji, but he would not be 100% honest. He still left some leeway. No matter what they are planning, did they involve Lang Jun? Master Yuanjing tried to enlighten him. My sister did not do anything, but my father. Lu Zhao secretly gritted his teeth. A few months ago, my father planned to be a matchmaker for me to marry a hunter's daughter. I received news that the hunter's daughter is most likely the body that the real sister, Lu Shi's soul, resides in. If I marry her, isn't it going against human relations? In a panic, I could only beg concubine Dai to escape Chongzhou overnight. After thinking about it, it seemed that everything was not right. After careful investigation, I realized that there was no hunter's daughter. My previous speculations were all wrong. It was obviously a bait thrown by someone else. I exposed my identity carelessly. I'm afraid my life is on the line. Lu Zhao fleeing Chongzhou in the middle of the night was not a rational choice. Instead, he exposed himself. However, there was no turning back. He had no choice but to run to the front line to seek Zhang Pengji's protection. After saying that, Lu Zhao rubbed his eyebrows with a headache. At such a young age, he had to bear such a heavy burden and responsibility that did not belong to him. Master Yuanjing was surprised to hear that. He asked Lu Zhao about the details of Lu Shi and remained silent for a while. Lu Zhao asked nervously, Sir, is there anything wrong? There seems to be nothing wrong with this. Master Yuanjing regained his senses and waved his hand. There are some things that I can't tell you in detail. I'm not trying to hide it, but I'm afraid that the more you know, the more dangerous it will be. To be precise, you are the only child left of your mother. Why don't you stay out of it or ask Lu Shi for protection to ensure that you have a night of peace? If she knew about this in the underworld, she would be happy. Although Lu Zhao was very smart, his education could not keep up. No matter how talented he was, he had wasted a lot of his talent. If he had been more careful, he would not have fallen for Lu Shi's trick. It was too late to say anything now. But, Lu Zhao said hesitantly, if I stay out of it, what about father and sister? The father and sister he was referring to were Lu Shi and the real Lu Shi. Because of Gu Min's notes and speculation, Lu Zhao suspected that Lu Shi had been possessed. He did not know that there were other inside stories. After all, the whole family was full of demons. As the only normal person, Lu Zhao was under a lot of pressure. It was understandable that he did not consider everything carefully. My mother's wish was to protect them when she was alive. I don't want to go against her will. Although Lu Zhao liked to live in a corner, his personality was very similar to Gu Min's. He treated his family with extraordinary enthusiasm. Master Yuanjing said, "You're really stubborn. Even if it means death, you're not afraid?" Lu Zhao shivered. His red lips became pale and dry. Of course I'm not afraid. The Lu Zhao in front of him seemed to overlap with the woman from decades ago. Chun-en, you can call me greedy or stupid, but I want both. This daughter is my lifeblood. I can't bear to lose her. But I also don't want history to change because of me. I can't be a sinner. I'm sure I can find the best of both worlds. In the end, Gu Min lost her life because of her greed. Betting on everything did not change a little. Master Yuanjing did not know how she died, but it was definitely not as simple as an illness. After so many years, he did not suspect Lu Shi. After all, after Gu Min's death, he went to Hu County and experienced dangerous situations. Now it seemed, everyone seemed to be hiding deep. Lu Zhao left Master Yuanjing's residence with disappointment. He put on his hood again to cover his face and sneaked out from the corner door. He did not dare to light a lamp. It would be bad if he was discovered. But, just as he went around the intersection, a slender black shadow came into view. The person was holding a long knife. He was scared out of his wits. Zhang Pengji sneered and said sarcastically, "You're so timid. How dare you go out in the middle of the night?" Lu Zhao heard the familiar voice. His squatting posture stiffened with his hands on his head. Sis. This time, not only was Lu Zhao scared out of his wits, he almost forgot how to speak human language. Go home. Although there is no curfew in the city, it's not safe for you to be outside alone. Zhang Pengji held the war god's sword in her left hand. She put her right hand on her waist and leaned against the wall. She leaned forward a few degrees toward Lu Zhao. Ah! Lu Zhao stood up with weak legs. He glanced at the war god's sword, afraid that the blade would kiss his neck in the next second. Lu Zhao walked 2 steps behind her like a little wife. He lowered his head and looked up from time to time to see Zhang Pengji's back. Sister. I didn't mean anything bad by looking for Master Yuanjing. Zhang Pengji snorted. I know. If you dare to reveal any of your ambitions, Master Yuanjing will look for me. Although Master Yuanjing did not make a clear statement, he was indeed on Zhang Pengji's side. Because in this world, only Zhang Pengji could help Master Yuanjing practice his way. Lu Zhao could not do it. If Lu Zhao was really ambitious, he would not be able to come up with a more valuable bargaining chip. He would not be able to persuade Master Yuanjing to change sides. He would even expose himself. Zhang Pengji also believed that Lu Zhao would not do such a stupid thing. Sister. Lu Zhao remembered what Master Yuanjing and his late mother Gu Min said. He took a deep breath and asked, I want to ask a favor of you. Zhang Pengji smiled. I refuse. Lu Zhao choked. Why? Sister, you haven't heard me out. I'm easy to talk to. As long as my life, dignity and principles are not violated, everything is negotiable. Otherwise, there's nothing to talk about. Lu Zhao shut his mouth. He looked a little embarrassed. Zhang Pengji pressed her hand on his head and smiled. Why are you so depressed? Come, smile for me. Lu Zhao forced a smile that was uglier than crying. Don't think too much. Maybe the thing you want is not as bad as you think. Chapter 12:29. Lu Zhao was deep in thought, but he did not dare to expect too much. Zhang Pengji did not explain further. After all, it was enough for her to be clear about many things. The more people who knew, the easier it was for things to go awry. Although Lu Zhao was clever, he was still too inexperienced. Who knew if he would ruin her plans in a moment of impulse? Okay, let's go home. Oh, go home. Jiang Pengji patted his head. She smiled warmly. If Lu Zhao dared to summon the courage to look straight at her, he would have realized that Jiang Pengji's eyes were filled with warmth. It was not a simple perfunctory act. The siblings put their arms around each other's shoulders. Jiang Pengji turned her head and glanced at Lu Zhao, who was only a little taller than her. In this era, Lu Zhao was not considered short. At least he was above average. He was as tall as a pine tree. However, in Jiang Pengji's eyes, he could only be considered petite. Zhao, you rejected the marriage proposed by father. Do you have any thoughts? Sister, why did you suddenly mention this? Parents' orders and matchmakers' words. Marriage has always been decided this way. How can I make my own decisions? Lu Zhao was startled. He probed. I'm not asking for much. As long as she's good-looking and has a good personality. The most important thing was that she had to be a normal person. Important things had to be repeated 3 times. Lu Zhao did not want the person by his side to be a demon who had been possessed, a monster who was born with knowledge, or something else. It was too scary. As long as she was a normal person, he would not be picky even if she was ugly, stupid, or had a lower family background. Jiang Pengji frowned. Although marriage is decided by the elders, you are the one who will spend a lifetime with her. To put it crudely, only your own feet will know if the shoes fit. The most important thing is that you like her. Only after marriage can there be harmony. Lu Zhao was still an underage youth. Even if he was clever, his temperament was still somewhat reserved. His cheeks were slightly flushed, and his expression was somewhat unnatural. It's not that I want to decline, but I really haven't seen many. How can I like her? If it was possible, Lu Zhao really wanted to be single for the rest of his life. It was fine if his wife was obedient, but if she was restless and urged him to fight for power or play tricks in secret, wouldn't that be harming him? It was better not to marry such a troublesome wife. Jiang Pengji frowned and said, There really aren't many decent families in Wanzhou. Why don't I go back and ask Huaiyu if there are any women of suitable age in the Feng clan? You're not young anymore. You'll be crowned in a year or 2. You can't not have a marriage. Lu Zhao was shocked. Did his sister mean to make the Feng family his wife? Sister, I'm still young. Why don't you let me stay for 2 more years? Lu Zhao smiled and shamelessly begged for mercy, but in his heart, his palms were sweating. Letting the Feng family become the Yu family was the same as wanting him to die faster. If I get married, how can I find an excuse to ask elder sister for a red seal during festivals? This little brother doesn't have anything of value. It's already difficult for me to support myself, let alone a family. Lu Zhao racked his brains, wanting to decline. I'm very poor now. Every day, I'm waiting for you to give me a big red seal to help me. Lu Zhao refused to give in. He shamelessly asked Jiang Pengji for this year's red seal gift in advance. It's almost New Year's Eve. Why don't you reward me first? Jiang Pengji was helpless against Lu Zhao. Judging from his words and actions, Lu Zhao's desire to live was extraordinarily strong. If he was allowed to live, he could live until the end of time. If he cherished his life so much, why couldn't he think of intervening in a situation he shouldn't have? Okay. We've won a few battles this year. Our income has increased a lot. Your sister isn't stingy. The red seal I gave you is not small. Jiang Pengji put her hand on Lu Zhao's shoulder and sent him back to her mansion. Lu Zhao didn't have a family and career. He didn't have a house in Wanzhou, so naturally, he could only squeeze in with her. Jiang Pengji asked someone to prepare supper for Lu Zhao so that he could eat before going to sleep. Where's elder sister? Lu Zhao asked her. Tens of thousands of troops have been fighting a war for 2 years. There are still many things to deal with. I'll be busy for a while, Jiang Pengji said matter-of-factly. If you handle these things well, the people under your rule will have a good new year. Don't worry about it, Zhao. Remember to sleep early. Lu Zhao stood in the corridor and listened to Jiang Pengji's words. His wide hood was piled on his shoulders, casting a large shadow. The candlelight there was not bright. Half of Lu Zhao's face was hidden in the shadows. He watched Jiang Pengji leave with a complicated expression. His eyes were filled with unfathomable thoughts. At some point, He sincerely wished that this person was his sister. As her younger brother, he could be proud of her. However, he knew very well that this was just his wishful thinking. Lu Zhao fell asleep with his mind full of thoughts. He didn't know that his hard-working model sister had jumped into Wei Xi's mansion with a basket of documents. She held a pen in her mouth and hung upside down under the eaves of the bedroom like a bat. She raised her hand and knocked on the window. Dong, dong, dong. The crisp sound was especially clear in the dark night. After a while, 2 candles lit up in the pitch-black room. Wei Xi was carrying one of them as he limped towards the window. Creak. Wei Xi raised his hand and opened the window a crack. Zhang Pengji's upside-down face suddenly came into view. Wei Xi was speechless. I don't have the energy to work overtime and stay up late alone. Zhang Pengji first put the basket on the ground, then flipped over and leaped into Wei Xi's room through the window. She then turned around and carried the basket in. I saw that your walking posture was strange. What's wrong with you? Zhang Pengji talked on, not giving Wei Xi any room to react. I'm fine. Wei Xi sighed softly and limped into the room. He raised his hand and closed the window. What was it like to have a master with superb martial arts skills? Wei Xi felt that she would appear in front of him at any time, any place, and under any circumstances. She could stimulate him at any time and any place. Zhang Pengji carried the basket and looked down at Wei Xi's feet. Only then did she realize that there was a lump of black hanging on one of his legs. Ing? It seemed to have noticed Zhang Pengji's line of sight. The lump of shadow turned its large face and stared at her with its black pearl-like watery eyes. It made 2 sounds from its mouth. It used its claws to hug Wei Xi's thigh and calf, putting the weight of its entire body on this leg. It was probably a little heavy. Wei Xi could only rely on shifting when he walked, so his walking posture was a little limping. Zhang Pengji said, You haven't fed it to death yet? She had not bothered with it since she threw it to Wei Xi. She thought that it had long been stolen and roasted by some greedy soldier. Wei Xi said, This is the young master appointed by the Lord. How would I dare to neglect it? It was Zhang Pengji's turn to be dumbfounded. When did she appoint a panda as the young master? Chapter 12:30. When he said this, Wei Xi's eyes sparkled with a smile, like the scattered stars in the Milky Way. Zhang Pengji clicked her tongue. She lifted the little thing up with one hand. It was obedient and timid. Its big face drooped, its semicircular ears moved, and it blinked pitifully at Zhang Pengji. I've been raising it for a while. Why is it still so big? She weighed it in her hand. It was heavier than before, but according to the growth pattern of an iron-eating beast, it did not make sense. Wei Xi said, I've asked an experienced beast officer to take a look. It's very healthy. Healthy? Zhang Pengji said. It's a little thing of unknown origin. It's normal for it to not grow up. It's convenient for you to keep it. An adult iron-eating beast was almost as tall as a human when it stood up. It was also heavy and had a fierce temperament. It was not safe for Wei Xi to keep it. If it did not grow up and maintained its current appearance, there was no harm in keeping it. Zhang Pengji put it in the basket on her back. The little thing lay on the edge of the basket and poked half its head out to observe secretly. Wei Xi took the initiative to help Zhang Pengji categorize the documents so that she could deal with them. With such cooperation, the documents that would have taken most of the night were completed in 2 hours. Zhang Pengji put down her pen and shook her sore wrist. After working for so long, her eyes were sore and her stomach was hungry. It would be wonderful if a delicious meal appeared at this time. As she was thinking, the fragrance of eggs wafted into her nose. When did Zixiao go out? Zhang Pengji looked up and saw Wei Xi holding a lantern in one hand and a bowl of egg custard with the fragrance of eggs in the other. Smelling the fragrance of the food, her mouth secreted saliva of desire. Zixiao knows me well. I'm starving. Wei Xi put down the plate. I saw that you were too engrossed in your work just now, so I did not disturb you. I borrowed the small kitchen in the courtyard to make some dinner. Under the iron-eating beast's eager gaze, Zhang Pengji finished the bowl of egg custard in no time. Zixiao's culinary skills are too good. I really want to marry you soon. Zhang Pengji mumbled and licked her lips as if she had not had enough. Wei Xi ignored this sentence and said, It's getting late, my lord should go back. Jiang Pengji wiped her mouth with a handkerchief and rolled onto Wei Si's bed like a rascal. The iron-eating beast that was squatting in the basket also crawled out clumsily. It twisted its plump buttocks and rubbed against Jiang Pengji bit by bit. Jiang Pengji raised her arms and hugged it. She hugged the iron-eating beast with her left hand and lifted a corner of the blanket with her right hand. She patted the other side of the bed towards Wei Si. Her eyes were dark and bright, making Wei Si's ears burn. Wei Si sighed and tightened his pajamas. He slowly moved to the bed and lay down stiffly. Zixiao's body is much better now. In the past, he always felt like a popsicle when he was in bed. Now, he finally has some warmth. Jiang Pengji rubbed her leg against Wei Si's calf. If Wei Si was a moving refrigerator, then she would be a stove that bounced around everywhere. For Wei Si, he could not warm up his bed for a long time, but she could warm him up by lying down for a while. When Jiang Pengji's bare feet touched his underwear, the temperature almost scalded him. My lord, Jiang Pengji said. Sigh Zixiao, you're really a gentleman. The saints also said that appetite and lust are part of human nature. It's normal for men and women to desire the opposite sex at a certain age. I see that Zixiao doesn't have a wife or a boy toy in his backyard. If you have feelings for him, do you still need to rely on yourself? Wei Si's eyes were focused on his nose and his nose was focused on his heart. He had the posture of an old monk in meditation. He lay flat on the side of the bed in a standard posture and did not move an inch. Jiang Pengji sighed in her heart. Sometimes, she could not help but doubt her own judgment. Which man could remain calm and unruffled in the face of a woman's provocation? Look Xiaowi? That did not exist. Jiang Pengji could not help but feel her hand down. Wei Si was so scared that his face turned red. My lord. Jiang Pengji said innocently, I'm worried about your body. Wei Si was speechless. He already had 2 children in his previous life. There was nothing to worry about. Although Wei Si looked relaxed, he actually used a great deal of willpower to restrain himself. He said, You still have government affairs early tomorrow morning. My lord, you should rest early and recuperate. Jiang Pengji secretly rolled her eyes. Sometimes, she wished that she was not a nuisance and did not have to abide by the tens of thousands of federal rules and regulations. Delicious food was close at hand. She could eat it and chew it into pieces if she opened her mouth, but she could not do it because of her principles. Yes, sleep. She felt that. Maybe Wei Si did not hold back and she was going to break her own principles. Jiang Pengji secretly carried a basket of documents back to the backyard of the government office at dawn. She pretended to have just woken up and called the maid in to freshen up. While eating breakfast, Jiang Pengji turned on the live stream room on time. The bullet screen was full of, Good morning. Jiang Pengji pushed the door open. The golden sunlight splashed on the ground and shone on people, making them feel at ease. Very good. Continue to be busy and try to get your annual leave as soon as possible. Jiang Pengji cheered herself on. The civil and military officials in the tent looked disinterested, but Han Yu, Xueqi, and Qin Gong solemnly answered, Yes. Haha, annual leave? That did not exist. Feng Zhen, Yang Si, and the other old foxes had long faces. They yawned from time to time as if they lacked sleep and overused their kidneys. Qiguan Rang also had heavy dark circles under his eyes, but he held a fan to cover half of his face when he wanted to yawn. Feng Jin and Xueqi were also complaining incessantly. As the members who stayed behind to guard the rear, their tasks were not light. Not only did they have to maintain the supply of logistics on the battlefield, but they also had to take care of the development and construction of the various territories. Everything was finally on the right track, but when the Lord came back, they were buried alive by government affairs. Speaking of which, couldn't the Lord spend the new year outside? Why did she have to come back? Suka's eyes were filled with silence. He had been with the Lord for almost 10 years. Since the earthquake in Dongqing, he had never enjoyed the taste of annual leave. Everyone else was having a reunion and eating their New Year's Eve dinner. He could only quickly eat 2 mouthfuls of rice and continue to be busy. What a **** hole. There was no such thing as an annual leave. Han Yu, who did not know what was going on, rubbed his palms together. Xueqi and Qin Gong were also eager to try. The other feudal lords chose spring and autumn to train their troops, But Jiang Pengji was different. Most of the training was concentrated in winter and summer. In winter and summer, there was no rest in the military camp. The training would also enter a high-intensity state. Xie Zhe and Qin Gong, the two newly surrendered generals, could take the opportunity to learn more about the unfamiliar military camp system. It would be convenient for them to lead the troops in the future. Qin Gong would lead the troops to Xueqi County after the new year in Wanzhou. They would be stationed there for long-term training. According to the current situation, when Jiang Pengji attacked Huang Song, she would have to transfer the troops from Xueqi County and Hu County. Qin Gong had a heavy task. He had to put in more effort to prepare. As the New Year's Eve approached, the atmosphere in Wanzhou and other places gradually became more festive. Red silk red lanterns were hung in front of every house. The lively atmosphere warmed the whole winter day. The students of the Golden Scale Academy wore blue and white uniforms with bright red warm coats over their heads. Their little faces were red from the cold wind. "Father, why are you here?" Chapter 12:31. Fengyi looked at his father calmly. His expression was slightly embarrassed, as if he was hesitating about something important. "Father, I only asked for 15 minutes of leave from the headmaster. If you have something to say, please say it quickly to avoid any delays." Addicted to learning, unable to extricate himself. A life without learning was a waste. Fengyi didn't like to waste precious time on meaningless things. Feng Zhen said, "Isn't the academy going to have its annual vacation?" "As far as I know, there's nothing for you to learn these days." Fengyi lifted his eyelids slightly, his tone as calm as ever. "Reviewing the old to learn the new, I want to take advantage of this annual vacation to consolidate the knowledge I have learned this year. Only by stabilizing my foundation can I improve further." Fengyi said, "Also, I secretly borrowed the textbooks for next year from the headmaster. The knowledge in the books is difficult, and I need to spend a lot of energy to read them. Father, if there's nothing important, I'll take my leave first. There's still time to discuss unimportant matters after school." Feng Zhen was speechless. Everything that should and shouldn't be said had been said by this kid. Once again, he doubted whether Feng Yi was his own son. How was this serious look like him at all? Feng Zhen didn't know if it was an illusion, but he felt like his authority as the head of the family was being greatly challenged. Seeing that Feng Yi was about to get up and leave after bowing, Feng Zhen quickly reached out and grabbed Feng Yi's arm. "There really is something. This matter concerns my marriage. Do you think it's important?" Feng Yi lifted his eyelids, his eyes filled with one sentence. After holding it in for so long, just to say a few useless words? Feng Yi said, "Father, you're in the prime of your life, but your backyard is empty. I think we should find a family and add a mistress." Feng Zhen already knew that his son was on the same page as him, but he was still worried because he didn't hear it with his own ears. Feng Yi was his only child for many years. He was stubborn and different from other youths his age. This child had his own ideas, and Feng Zhen had high hopes for him. Feng Zhen didn't want to raise his child into a yes-man, and he didn't want Feng Yi to be his subordinate. He wanted to know Feng Yi's attitude on some important family matters. But, knowing was one thing, but his son was so understanding that he was so touched that he almost cried. As expected of his biological son, he knew how to dote on his father. After Feng Yi finished speaking, she turned around again. Feng Zhen hurriedly pulled her back. "Aren't you going to ask who it is? The 3 letters and 6 rights should be discussed in detail. I don't have an elder by my side, so I can only discuss it with you." In another 2 years, Feng Yi would reach the age of marriage and could be considered half an adult. Feng Yi asked, "Is this father's idea or concubine Xiu's?" Feng Zhen was stunned for a moment. He, who had always been shameless, was suddenly exposed by his own son. He blushed with embarrassment. "How did you know it was Xiu Nyangzi?" Feng Zhen asked. Feng Yi replied, "Father's hobby is very unique. How come I don't even know this?" No matter the age of men, they all seemed to like fresh and tender women. Only her father's taste was unique. There were thousands of beauties in the world, but he only loved mature and beautiful mature women. This was probably a form of devotion. Ever since Wan Xiu moved into the manor, Feng Zhen's private life had become a lot more restrained. Since he was busy with work, he didn't have much fun. In Feng Zhan's own words, it was. There was a guest of the opposite sex living in his manor. As the host, he couldn't be too unrestrained and ruin the other person's reputation. Haha, his excuse was dignified, but Feng Yi didn't believe a word of it. If Feng Zhan really didn't like it, he wouldn't have written a letter to Feng Yi asking him to take care of Wan Xiu. Feng Yi took the opportunity to let Wan Xiu stay in the manor's guest courtyard. Wasn't it also because of Feng Zhan's hint? Therefore, Feng Yi wasn't surprised that Wan Xiu would become the next mistress of the Feng Manor. If there was a surprise, it would probably be that Feng Zhan had been well-behaved for more than a year and didn't overstep his boundaries with Wan Xiu. The story of Feng Zhan and Wan Xiu was like a rat guarding a rice jar. In the end, it grew to love the white rice in the jar. Feng Zhan's face was burning after his son mercilessly exposed him. He said, "This was my idea." Xion Yangzi agreed, but she felt that she needed to ask for your opinion. "If that's the case, pick an auspicious day after the new year and get this done," Feng Yi said naturally. "Time is a bit tight, so Lady Xiu will have to suffer. I will go back to the manor after school to check the storeroom. The 3 scholarly documents and 6 rituals must be complete." Feng Zhan was speechless. Was this a son or an ancestor? I have observed Lady Xiu for a long time. She has a good temperament. There is no need to worry that anything will go wrong in handing the manor over to her, Feng Yi said. Marriage is a big deal. Neither party can be wronged. Since Lady Xiu and father have the intention to marry, father should respect her. Before the wedding, let Lady Xiu move out of the guest courtyard and choose a house outside as her maiden home. If Mistress Xiu were to marry out of the mansion and then marry back into the mansion, it would be somewhat improper for outsiders to see. I heard that Mistress Xiu and the Duke of Lanting used to be from the same hometown. Father also has some face in front of the Duke of Lanting. It would be better to ask for a favor and let the Duke of Lanting act as a matchmaker. Feng Zhan was speechless. Feng Yi asked again, Lady Xiu's status is special, and she is remarried. I'm afraid her dowry will not be enough. Father, do you want to add some privately? After all, there was the step of showing the dowry to the bride. This was related to the bride's pride. The dowry of noble ladies was accumulated from birth. Wan Xiu's background was not weak, so her dowry was naturally rich. However, Wan Xiu followed her ex-husband to guard Hanchang Pass. Most of her dowry was lost in the chaos of war. She later found some, but it was only the tip of the iceberg. Even if it was a second marriage, she had to have what she needed. Outsiders could not laugh at the bride. Feng Zhan's mouth twitched a few times. He couldn't force out a word. He just had to sit down and listen to his son's arrangements. Feng Yi thought for a while and felt that there were still many things that had not been arranged. According to normal procedures, the couple had to prepare for marriage for a year or half a year. However, this was a special time. There would be a war after the beginning of spring or the autumn harvest. It was impossible to prepare slowly. Of course I have to add, Feng Zhan's net worth was not small. After all, Jiang Pengji was not a stingy lord. Every time there was a great victory, she would plunder the enemy's property. She would always give away some money. In addition, there were many profitable businesses in Feng Zhan's manor. After a few years of accumulation, not only had they made up for their previous losses, but they had also accumulated a large sum of money. It would not be a problem to make a decent dowry. Feng Zhan said, however, there is no need to go through the public accounts. Just take it from my private treasury. Feng Yi was the eldest son of the legal wife. The majority of the family property must be left to him. He could not let his son suffer just to marry a wife. Chapter 1232. Feng Zhan thought his joke was humorous, but his son gave him a cold stare. Father, be careful with your words. Chongqing is still young. What does she know? Feng Zhan muttered. You speak as if you know a lot. Do you want me to take you to broaden your horizons? His son had already had a dream leak. There was no harm in knowing some things in advance. If the boy had a dream leak, it meant that he would have the ability to carry on the family line. Jokes aside, Feng Zhen knew that his son had been weak since young. If he really wanted to marry and have children, he would have to wait until he was 20 years old. Feng Yi said, Father, Feng Zhen replied. What? 15 minutes are up. I will take my leave first. We will discuss other matters in detail when we return to the manor. With that, Fengyi stood up and left, leaving Feng Zhan with a cool and indifferent back. Feng Zhan was speechless. Asterisk asterisk. Asterisk asterisk, this is definitely not my own son. Fengyi walked back to the classroom with light steps. His expression was still calm, and one could faintly see his future glory. He walked through the long corridor. The short pine trees planted in the academy were covered with a layer of snow. A few figures in blue and white school uniforms sat or leaned against the rockery, benches, and long tables. They held books made of bamboo slips or bamboo paper in their hands. The crisp sound of reading floated into his ears. Every time he saw such a scene, Fengyi's mood would jump, as if his body was light. He pushed open the paper door of the classroom, bent over and changed into clean socks and wooden clogs. He walked to his seat and sat down. Not long after he sat down, a figure also sneaked into the classroom. "Why is Uncle Feng looking for you?" Chongqing opened her textbook to cover her face. On the surface she sat upright, but she was secretly whispering to Fengyi. "Father and Lady Xiu's wedding is near," Fengyi replied. Chongqing pouted and asked, "Is it near?" Fengyi said, "When they get married, Lady Xiu will be the mistress. I will call her mother." Chongqing was about half a size younger than Fengyi. No matter how smart and sensible she was, there were many things that she could not understand. But she is not your mother. Is there another mother?" Fengyi said, "Yes, but father is more important." Chongqing blinked, her eyes filled with confusion. Fengyi said, "My mother passed away many years ago, and my father isn't that old either. When I get married at a young age, don't tell me I'm going to leave my father alone at home. While he was still young, he should find someone to accompany him as soon as possible so that he wouldn't have anyone to take care of him in his later years. No matter how considerate their children are, they still have another family to take care of, and they are not as considerate as their wives. Now that father has settled down, I can also put one of my worries to rest." Chongqing was confused. He already had a mother, yet he had to find another woman to be his mother. Did he really feel good about it? She tried to imagine. If her father brought a strange woman to be her mother, she would definitely be very sad. Fengyi saw through her thoughts. The person who will accompany me for a long time in the future will not be my father. Similarly, the person who will accompany my father will not be me. Chongqing's face was bitter. Her baby-fat snow-white skin was flushed. Fengyi couldn't help but poke him, and a small part of his chubby face sunk in. He said, "You'll understand when you're older." Chongqing said in distress, "Sigh, I don't want to understand. Brother Fengyi can help me understand." Fengyi said, "Okay." School ended on time. Fengyi first sent Chongqing, Sun Lan, and Qiguan Jinghui back to their respective mansions. Fortunately, the mansions were very close to each other, and the furthest was only a street away. He returned home before sunset. After returning to the mansion, Fengyi summoned the butler to discuss his father's marriage. However, these days, I don't seem to see any interaction between the two of them. Why did father suddenly? The butler's face twitched. He didn't know if he should tell his little Lang Jun about the things of the adult world. Fengyi saw the clues and asked, "Could it be that something happened?" The butler said, 2 days ago, Duke Lanting bestowed a fruit wine that was newly buried the year before last. Master has been interested in that madam for a long time, so he used this to invite Madame Wan to admire the snow. His original intention was to get closer and talk about family matters. Unexpectedly, the wine was not like ordinary rice wine or sake. It was strong and spicy, and had a strong after-effect. Master boasted that he would not get drunk even after drinking 1,000 cups. He didn't control himself at all, and accidentally drank a little too much. For ordinary sake or rice wine, anyone with a bit of alcohol tolerance would be able to drink 1,000 cups without getting drunk. Although it was called wine, its alcohol content was only slightly higher than plain water. Even a woman who didn't drink could drink 1 or 2 pots. The two careless ones thought it was ordinary wine. The moon was clear, and the snow was alluring. The two of them were tipsy, and there was only a thin paper window between them. Taking advantage of the situation, they rolled together. Although it was a bit unexpected, there was no such thing as integrity in times of war. The two of them were unmarried, so it was normal for them to drive together. Wan Xiu wanted to keep this a secret, But Feng Zhan took this opportunity to bring up marriage. Wan Xiao'er was a widowed woman with no relatives or elders by her side, so she could decide her own marriage. Feng Zhan, on the other hand, had a son who was almost grown up. If he wanted to remarry, he had to ask for Feng Yi's opinion. After hearing this, Feng Yi's expression darkened. Ridiculous! Entering the bedroom of the opposite sex before marriage, and doing such a thing that tarnished a reputation, her father was really stupid. The butler was silent, as if he didn't hear Feng Yi scolding his father for being ridiculous. Even if Feng Zhan didn't do well, Feng Yi shouldn't belittle him in this way based on the current situation. After calming down, Feng Yi asked the butler to get Feng Zhen's private account book and the official account book. Marry her as soon as possible, or else it would be bad if someone died. The butler wasn't worried about this. Master only had a little husband after many years of marriage. Because Feng Zhan was born with a weak constitution, it affected Feng Yi. Not to mention that Feng Zhan had been taking hanqi powder for a while. Although he quit and took good care of his body for a few years, it still affected him. Soul imprint? No way. She heard that Madame Wan had some problems with her body too. The chances of these two killing someone were not high. Feng Yi said, "You can't guarantee that you won't have it? A son knows his father best." Based on Feng Zhen's temper, he might do something ridiculous like sleeping in a lady's room when he finally had sex. If he didn't do it once, a few more times might do it. The butler was speechless. What the little husband said made sense. The Golden Scale Academy's annual break was about to begin. Feng Yi had a lot of time every day to prepare for his father and stepmother's marriage. He was so busy that he didn't even have time to rest, making the two people involved seem useless. Wan Xiao'er wasn't as thick-skinned as Feng Zhan, so she was a little embarrassed. Feng Zhan said, "Don't worry. Let him practice now so that he can marry Feng Huayu's daughter in the future. I don't have to worry about him." Wan Xiao'er was speechless. Chapter 1233. Reality proved that the new year after the war was not a good time. Those who were busy continued with their work. Those who had to work overtime continued to work overtime. Only Feng Zhan stood out among the crowd. Yongxi slammed the table loudly. He was so angry that his beard was about to float. "I don't care, I want to get married and ask for leave." The entire government office was almost drowned in thick bamboo slips. People had to walk on tiptoes. Everyone was in dire straits. Feng Zhan, the old and frivolous fellow, had gone to busy himself with wedding matters after giving the Lord a slip. Why? Was he discriminating against married and unmarried people? Yongxi saw that Feng Zhan was staying at home and not busy at all. He felt unbalanced. Feng Zhan held a plate of dried fruits in one hand and a thin, long bamboo toothpick in the other. He poked a piece and threw it into his mouth. He said leisurely, "Jingrong, the walls have ears." As the Lord's important minister, how can you find such a lame excuse to avoid responsibility? If the Lord finds out, she will be furious and very disappointed. Don't lose sight of the bigger picture because of the small things. Yongxi was so angry that he wanted to laugh. "Zhi, do you know that deceiving the Lord is a serious crime?" Feng Zhan asked for leave with the excuse of preparing for his wedding. Jiang Pengji felt that there were no elders or relatives in Feng Zhen's family to take care of his wedding, so she simply granted him leave. Not only did she let him take this year's leave, but she also generously lightened Feng Zhen's burden and pushed the burden on others. With one less main labor force, wouldn't the burden on others be heavier? The most optimistic estimate was that many people would be busy until the morning of New Year's Eve. If they took a little more time, they would still have to stay in the study to fight after New Year's Eve dinner. The houses of Jiang Pengji's civil and military officials were close to each other. Most of them were in the central area. They were either neighbors or separated by one or two streets. Yongxi and Feng Zhan lived close to each other. The former took the time to check on the latter's preparation progress. He didn't know if he didn't care, but he was shocked when he did. Where was Feng Zhan, who was rumored to be so busy that he jumped up and down? Who was this lowly person in front of him leisurely lying on a small couch in front of an open window, drinking sake and tasting dried fruits? Feng Zhan said he was taking leave to prepare for his wedding, but in the end, he was secretly sleeping in and hiding. If this wasn't deception, what was? In the face of Yongxi's threat, Feng Zhen was not the least bit intimidated. Instead, he smiled faintly and said, "Zhen did not lie to my lord." Yangxi asked, "You're resting here. Who's busy with your wedding?" Feng Zhan puffed out his chest proudly and said, "Who asked me to have such an intelligent and capable son? A son should be like this." Yangxi. He had already been showered with dog food by Feng Zhan, and now he was showing off his son. Couldn't he show some sympathy for an older single man? Feng Zhan cheekily picked his teeth with a toothpick and said, "You are all alone. How can you understand the beauty of having a virtuous wife and a filial son?" Yangxi immediately revealed an expression of disgust. He gritted his teeth and said, "It's time to let that Madame Wan see your virtue." How could Feng Zhan have the cheek to do such a vulgar act in front of outsiders? Feng Zhan said, "In the future, when it's fun in the bedroom, you'll naturally see it." Jingrong, you don't understand the joys of a married couple. Yangxi. That's damned enough. Having successfully disgusted Yangxi, Feng Zhan hummed a little tune. He reclined on a small couch, his outer robe slipping down to his shoulders, revealing a green Confucian robe. His hair scarf was loose, and his black hair draped over his shoulders. He propped himself up on the couch with one hand and reached for a steaming cup of wine with the other. He took a sip. At this moment, a gust of cold wind blew in from outside the window. The cold wind carried fine white snow, drifting to the top of his head in strands of hair. Auspicious snow indicates a bumper harvest. Next year will definitely be a bumper harvest, he murmured inside. Outside, the festive atmosphere was strong. Commoners wearing thick new winter clothes could be seen on the streets and alleys. After a few years of construction, the entire Xiangyang district had become the commercial center of Wanzhou. There was an endless stream of merchants coming and going from all over the place. The buildings in Xiangyang district were also gradually renovated and remodeled, from the original low and dilapidated wooden houses and stone houses to green-tiled wooden houses. The streets, big and small, were paved with clean and tidy stone or green bricks, wide and clean. Because of the repeated expansions and modifications of the city, the original city gate was changed to an inner city gate. Later, a gate and 2 city gates were built. In terms of prosperity, the current Xiangyang district was not inferior to the former Shangjing. The former was better than the latter. The population had expanded from the original 20,000 to 30,000 to more than 300,000. As the end of the year approached, the market was already a sea of red. The merchants and vendors on both sides of the street were enthusiastically promoting their goods. It had been snowing heavily in the past few days. The district headquarters had issued an order for all the commoners to sweep away the snow to prevent the houses from collapsing. The commoners had been maintaining this order for several years and had long gotten used to it. At first, there were outsiders who had migrated here who didn't care. In the end, a commoner passed by the commoner's house and slipped and fell, breaking his bones. The commoner was furious and sued the family to the magistrate's office. The magistrate's office sent bailiffs to inspect the snow and judged the commoner to have improperly swept away the snow. They were fined a sum of money, and the head of the household was also arrested and sent to prison for 3 days as punishment. After the heavy punishment, no one dared to violate the district headquarters' orders anymore. After a few years, sweeping the snow had also evolved into every household's winter entertainment. Yangxi passed by a certain residential alley. Separated by a courtyard wall that was taller than a person, he faintly saw a burly figure in black standing on the eaves sweeping the snow. "Isn't that General Fu?" Yangxi mumbled and hurriedly stopped the horse carriage. He tiptoed and tried to take a closer look. Fu Wang's muscles were very strong and strong. At this moment, he was wearing a short black outfit. The tight clothes were wet and stuck to his body, outlining the contours of his muscles and exposing all the advantages of his broad shoulders and narrow waist. Which man wouldn't be jealous and envious of him? He rolled his sleeves up to his elbows. The muscles on his forearms swelled and tightened due to his strength. Both his hands held a large broom specially used for sweeping snow. This doesn't seem to be General Fu's residence? Yangxi looked at the surrounding terrain and once again confirmed that he didn't remember wrongly. "Go, knock on the door and say that the master is here to visit General Fu." Fu Wang, who was in the courtyard, was also confused. He didn't have a deep friendship with Yangxi. Did the other party have to visit him and Lady Huijuan's residence? Yes, Fu Wang was currently in Huijuan's residence visiting the child and helping her sweep the snow on the roof. There were only a few old maids and maidservants in Huijuan's residence. The house was also relatively high, so it was inconvenient for them to climb up. Thus, Fu Wang volunteered. As someone who was raised by a pack of wolves, Fu Wang's style of doing things was obviously closer to that of a wolf. He didn't lack patience when waiting for prey. He would infiltrate the other party's life bit by bit and then take them down with a thunderous force. He wasn't afraid of failure, but he was afraid of not being able to keep his cool. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.